Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel. I become Destroyer. Then destroy the Marvel world. It starts. Chapter 21. Within half an hour, Chen Lu greeted almost all the survivors in the entire supermarket, leaving a good impression in their hearts. He used some cold jokes, humorous performances and an optimistic attitude to make the otherwise lifeless atmosphere in the entire supermarket a little more lively. Alex, who came in with him to take refuge, was just the opposite. He kept silent, lying coldly in the dark corner of the supermarket, mumbling some strange things to himself. Father in heaven, I am in pain, and you have widened me. Now please have mercy on me and listen to my prayer. Although Alex seemed to lower his voice, the volume control is so audible to others. At this time, Chen Li looked at him with disgust and said to everyone, "Don't listen to this madman. In fact, he is really weird, and it makes me feel scared." At this moment, Alex took out a notebook again and began to frantically write pictures on it, and continued to babble incomprehensible sentences. "God, please curse Satan again so that he can't work at will. I beg you, now put him under the power of the cross again, so that he can't move." This kind of madness naturally aroused the disgust of other people. Even the same religious person could hardly tolerate others praying loudly in such a situation. After all, the most important thing for them to survive at this time is to unite and fight the enemy together. There is a person who does nothing but praise for himself, which undoubtedly affects the morale of the team. This is actually what Chen Lu likes to see. Mutated infected person spiritual link. Chen Lu. Not bad, Alex, your acting skills are enough to win several Oscar winners. Alex. It's too much, Master. I will continue to work hard. Chen Lu. Very good. Are the zombies assembled outside? Female infected person. Master, 300 zombies are on standby at any time, and they are assembled behind the opposite building. Chen Lu. Very good. Let's go ahead as planned. When everyone was moving away from Alex because of disgust, only Hawkeye approached him friendly, squatting down beside him and saying in an unhurried tone, Hey, are you okay? Look at it. I heard me say that the zombies trapped us here. Their names may be Bobby or Charles, but they are not called Satan. Everyone is trying to defend here. We can't coax the kids while fighting. It doesn't matter who you are praying to. Your God must hope that you can pick up a gun, because then he won't lose one believer. However, it seems that Hawkeye's persuasion did not reach Alex at all, and he became even more mad, holding his head in fear and screaming, "There are still half an hour, they are coming. Now, they are going to kill all the blasphemers. Here they are, in 29 minutes. Hawkeye was also very helpless in the face of this kind of completely ignorant guy, and had to evacuate the curious crowd around to avoid them being affected by Alex. No one believes these gods and ghosts. After all, they have been fighting here for several days. You can only rely on yourself if you want to survive. At least all survivors now think so. Chen Lu glanced at Alex and said to Hawkeye, I warned you, we'd better lock up this annoying guy, so as not to cause catastrophe later. Hawkeye, who at least received an American-style liberal democratic education, naturally cannot accept this reckless behavior, which is no different from lynching. He shook his head and defended Alex. He is just too scared. Besides, he hasn't done anything. Did nothing. Stupid Hawkeye, you will immediately understand what language is the most terrifying weapon. Chen Lu smiled secretly in his heart. For the next half an hour, Chen Lu continued to have a relationship with other people, trying to leave more positive and deep impressions on more people, while Alex continued to talk like magic sounds. Generally, brainwashing everyone close to him naturally caused dissatisfaction among many people. Chen Lu looked at his watch and found that it was almost time for the planned corpse wave to strike. He walked to the window and looked out, and it happened that the first zombie had already rushed out. Turning his head to look at Alex again, the latter was repeating, They are here. They are here. They are here. Juan, everything is ready, no east wind. Chen Lu drew out a 9mm pistol and fired several empty guns at the window. The sudden sound of gunfire awakened the sleepy people. He pulled his throat in a panic and shouted, They are here. The sudden attack late at night made everyone doubly fearful, and some people screamed loudly not knowing where to go. At this time, Hawkeye stood up again, took a few sensitive steps and jumped to the highest shelf, took out a flashing arrow from the back and shot it to the ceiling, and the whole supermarket was illuminated by the intense light for a moment, frightening people. He also stopped shouting and instinctively covered his eyes with his hands. "Listen, everyone." Amidst the dazzling white light, an eagle-eyed leader full of leadership shouted, "We can't relax our vigilance no matter whether it is day or night. It makes no difference whether zombies come during the day or at night. www.novelmtl.com, let's fight them back. Now, I need all of you to unite with me and stand on the line. Do you understand? A leader who can remain calm and take the lead can always stabilize the morale of the team at critical times. Obviously, Hawkeye is such a talent. Chen Lu believes that as long as there are eagle eyes here, even if thousands of zombies come here, they will be killed in vain, and they will only be exhausted until they run out of ammunition and food. But now, he only plans to pay 300 ordinary zombies to get here. Challenge. Amid the roar of Hawkeye, almost all the survivors picked up their guns and leaned toward the window, firing at the zombies continuously emerging from the opposite streets and lanes. A few bolder youths, as well as Chen Lu and Alex, who had different plans, ran to the first floor to resist the zombies that broke through the plank. Chen Lu, are you ready, Alex? Alex, you can start anytime, master. Chen Lu, very good, first wait for our extra actor to be in place, you go to the window and wait. I figured out a way to get rid of a few people first to make them scared a little bit. Alex, follow your instructions. Fierce gunfire roared continuously on the second floor of the supermarket, and countless bullets poured toward the corpse tide. Various pistols, assault rifles, and submachine guns vibrated wildly at their own rhythm, like a prelude to a symphony of a giant band. The opening scene of the first big drama planned by Chen Lu officially opened here. The turbulent tide of corpses rushed through the dense rain of guns and bullets, without fear of life and death, and pounced on the wooden planks of the windows on the first floor, and began to beat these wooden planks vigorously so that the defenses on the first floor began to slowly disintegrate. The task of the young men who rushed down by Chen Lu was to shoot through the gaps between the boards to kill the zombies that were destroying the boards, as far as possible to prevent even a single zombie from entering. The pistol bullets flew around, hitting the wood chips on the window, and it also forced back the zombies who were scratching the wooden board behind. But over time, more and more zombies have crossed the fire defense line on the second floor. A large number of zombies gathered in front of the doors and windows on the first floor, greatly increasing the pressure on the defense of the first floor team. Chen Lu can still try to break it secretly at this time, find the place where the wooden board is not nailed firmly, and control the zombies to attack from the weakly defensive window. At the same time, he pretended to shoot at the zombies, but actually aimed at the rotten part of the wooden board, making it easier for the zombies outside to destroy the wooden board and climb in through the window. As the first window broke, a few zombies crawled in, and immediately numbed the scalp of these nervous survivors, and even the palms of the guns couldn't help shaking. Immediately after the second and third windows were destroyed, more and more zombies successfully invaded and began to pounce on the survivors. Hawkeye also noticed the pressure on the first floor, and asked loudly, "How's the situation on the first floor? Do you need support?" Before the other members of the squad could react, Chen Lu yelled and replied, "We can do it. Stabilize the defense line on the second floor, don't let more zombies arrive here." Since the second floor of the supermarket is the main firepower to prevent the zombies from approaching, Hawkeye can't actually pull away to help the team on the first floor. At this time, Chen Lu's confident and calm answer was really helpful. He even gave Hawkeye a feeling that the one he was cooperating with was not a civilian with a gun, but a titan who had experienced a lot of killings. In fact, Hawkeye was right, but Chen Lu was not on his side. The zombies that rushed into the supermarket surrounded and suppressed the team led by Chen Li from all directions, causing the shooting of the crowd to become more panic, and the task changed from preventing the zombies from breaking into trying to survive as much as possible. It just so happened that Chen Lu was planning to kill 2 people first in order to frighten the group of survivors. This is not an unattainable goal. Ah, save me, they caught me. In a moment, 2 unlucky ghosts encountered the zombie's poisonous hand, and they were bitten by the zombie's open blood basin. Suddenly, they screamed and declared that they were not saved on the spot. Chen Lu also pretended to resist first, but the bullets basically just passed by the zombies, which was just a show of heart. Okay, kill 2. Next, It's time to improve my positive image. Chen Lu changed into a magazine, his eyes became sharp, and his shooting accuracy suddenly improved, almost reaching the realm of 100 shots in 100 shots. Help! Another young man threw the zombie to the ground, and pressed the zombie's head with both hands to resist the zombie's bite. Chen Lu just shot it casually when he saw it, and with a bang, he beat the head of the zombie that was holding him into the appearance of a broken watermelon. The splash of brain splashed his face, and the young man was shocked. Chen Lu quickly rushed to this guy in 3 steps and 2 steps, pulled him up from the ground and said, "There is no time to be in a daze, pick up the gun to protect yourself." Next, Chen Lu continued to work as his firefighter, basically where he appeared in danger. Since the zombies that came in were all controlled by Chen Lu, he basically knew who would be attacked. So every time at the very moment, Chen Lu can quickly appear next to the people in need, pretending to do his best to help them get out of their troubles, and naturally won the gratitude of almost everyone. And it seems that under Chen Lu's activity, the number of zombies that broke into the first floor of the supermarket has also been wiped out less and less, and the tide of corpses seems to be slowly repelled. Despite the loss of 2 companions, everyone did not have time to be sad. The first thing they felt was extremely gratified that they could survive, and of course, they were grateful to Chen Lu who saved his life. At this moment, people suddenly realized the existence of Alex, and recalled carefully. For a moment, it seems that this mysterious man did follow the team down to the first floor. But as soon as the war broke out, this guy disappeared. No one has seen him fire a shot just now, nor have he fought with zombies, so how did he survive? Just when everyone was in doubt, Alex's next behavior gave them even greater doubts, and even shocked them to speak. He approached the dangerous window sill alone, looking out the window as if looking up at a certain god or Buddha, and completely relaxed his vigilance all over, like a prisoner welcoming the death penalty. Everyone was stunned by his weird or even mentally retarded behavior, and the entire team was at a loss. A roar of a zombie came from the window, and a zombie with a rotten skin and a hideous face suddenly emerged from under the window sill. Is like it has been lurking somewhere, and it just happened to appear in Alec. In front of C, 1 person and 1 corpse were less than an arm's distance apart, in a real state of being within reach. Just when everyone thought that the plasma ejection was about to happen again, the expected screams did not sound. The survivors, who closed their eyes in fear in advance, slowly opened their eyes, and a strange situation that they had never imagined was happening in front of them. The zombies standing in front of Alex did not open their mouths and gnaw at him directly as usual, but stood in front of Alex dumbly, seeming to have no malice towards him. Alex did not show the slightest fear, but boldly stretched out his index finger and slowly stretched it toward the ugly and terrifying face of the zombie. This scene is like the famous painting, The Creation of Adam, when Adam stretches out his fingers to God, trying to touch some mysterious existence in awe. What are you doing? While others were still in a daze for the incredible scene in front of them, Chen Lu rushed towards Alex with a loud shout, and pulled Alex back from the zombies as hard as he did to save others, then turned around and fired several shots at the zombies who hadn't attacked Alex just now. Boom, bang, bang, several bullet shells were flying in the air, and blood spattered on the zombies. Under the shining of the gunfire, Alex began to mutter to himself and make a creepy prayer. The Lord of Heaven has forgiven me. Chen Lu's sudden intervention has made the short-lived supernatural scene more deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. I am afraid that all witnesses will not want to forget this in their lives. This is also the effect Chen Lu wants to achieve. Sometimes a casual glance can leave a deeper impression on people. From this group of witnesses, a lot of rumors will be thrown out immediately. This is also the first spread of the cult step. When the first witnesses were unable to accurately describe the incident, how weird would the latter incident be spread? People's imagination is unlimited, especially when it is deliberately used. But at present Chen Lu still needs to continue to maintain his glorious and stalwart positive image, so he cursed at Alex. What are you crazy thinking? You want to die, right? I'll let you get out of here now. After speaking, Chen Lu was very excited and pulled Alex up from the ground, making a gesture to throw him out of the window. These survivors finally reacted. How can they tolerate Chen Lu throwing his companions out to death because of such a trivial matter at this moment of crisis? Immediately a few young people rushed over and hugged Chen Lu, and with their hands together, they pulled them apart, and then used their bodies to block Chen Lu from letting him continue to approach Alex. Calm down, Chen, calm down, okay. The people who persuaded them to shout loudly. After tossing like this for a while, Chen Lu seemed to regain his senses, and took a deep breath and said, okay, I am calm. Sorry, everyone, I just have a hunch that this kid will kill all of us here. Suddenly, Alex on the other side stared at Chen Lu with a gloomy gaze. Even the untargeted crowd of onlookers felt cold in their back, as if he was staring into the abyss. The mystery on Alex is getting worse, and people are beginning to realize that things are not simple. The dispute between the two will not be discussed for now. Since the zombies have been repelled, the first task must be to repair the damaged fortifications so as not to lose shelter when the next wave of corpses arrives. Hawkeye and others who remained on the second floor for sniping also went down to the first floor to help repair the planks. Almost all the survivors gathered together, and naturally everything that happened just now began to spread. After hearing about Chen Lu's heroic battles to save people from times of crisis, he naturally received praise and respect from everyone. And after hearing that Alex and the zombies were in strange contact just now, everyone looked suspicious. After all, this was really weird. If all this is true, then this man may be mankind's greatest hope for defeating zombies. After hearing this rumor, of course, Hawkeye immediately reacted to the value contained therein, and immediately put aside the people who were busy repairing the work. Quietly ran to a place with no one to report to Shield. Bureau. Seeing Hawkeye cautiously avoiding the crowd and tiptoeing away, Chen Lu knew that the first phase of his plan had been completed. In fact, the goal of the plan is very simple. Let the infected Hawkeye board a rescue helicopter sent by Shield alone. Inducing Hawkeye to seek rescue from Shield, this is the first step of the plan. After discovering Alex, a man who might be hiding the secret of cracking the zombie virus, it is impossible for Hawkeye not to report the situation to SHIELD, and it is impossible for Shield not to send a helicopter to pick up Alex. Then the second step of the next plan is to kill all the survivors except Hawkeye. If you don't hesitate to spend your money, in fact, it would be fine to send endless zombies to attack here, and you can achieve the goal by sacrificing thousands of ordinary zombies. But Chen Lu didn't want to be so wasteful. He had a better idea to make this survivor fortress self-defeating. On the other hand, Hawkeye is arguing with his boss, Shield. Director Nick Fury about the rescue of survivors. Nick, let me ask you again. Is Shield really wanting to treat a group of American citizens who are besieged and helpless in a flood of zombies? They may have parents waiting for them to return home, and perhaps children take care. Are you willing to watch this group of people being eaten by zombies into their kind? Hawkeye said anxiously toward an invisible communicator. Barton, I understand your feelings. But this time is not as simple as rescue in the disaster area. We cannot ensure that everyone we rescued from the virus-infected area is safe enough. Even I have to isolate the soldiers who rescued you last time. Get up, because we still don't know how the virus spreads. The National Security Bureau has been stopping us from acting rashly. Shield cannot launch a large-scale rescue operation regardless of their orders. Hawkeye, I now order you to take that possibility bringing back humans who are immune to zombies attack may be related to the lives of billions of people. This was obviously not the answer Hawkeye wanted to hear. Faced with Nick's order, he categorically replied, don't even think about it. As long as there is a living person here, I won't leave. That person named Alex, I will figure out a way to get on the helicopter. As for me, I will stick to the rescue, everyone. Barton, hello. The communication was hung up. Excessive respect for human rights and life is the fatal flaw of Hawkeye. It can be said that he is not a very qualified national agency agent. In the Marvel movie, Captain America 3 Civil War, the Eagle Eye as an agent decisively stands on the side of Captain America, who represents the American spirit, instead of defending the American government. The power of the Iron Man camp. Hawkeye has always obeyed the American dream full of idealism, and will not be completely loyal to the actual American government. That's why he was so easily used by La Chen. When Hawkeye came out of the dark corner, he found a group of people around Alex, sitting there quietly listening to his prayers. And another group of people, under the command of Chen Lu, sweated to consolidate the fortifications. Only after a short 10 minutes of fierce fighting, the survivors in this supermarket were divided into two factions by two newcomers. The practical school headed by Chen Lu, and the superstitious school headed by Alex. Practitioners still account for the overwhelming majority, so there have not been many disputes, but this is not a good sign. So Hawkeye called Chen Lu over and asked him with a serious expression like an officer. Chen, I just walked away for a few minutes, what's the matter? Chen Lu glanced in the direction of Alex and the others with disdain. A disgusted expression appeared on his face, and said with a sneer, they are infected with a virus called a cult. Give them up. Those who were in Alex, the people who sat down in front of Cass, were all dead. Surrounded by a few confused ignorant people, Alex lowered his head and covered his face with his hood, and prayed to who was born out of nothing, let me come and save these people. The world should understand you. Truth, bathe in your holy light. They are not all bad people, there are always people who are worthy of accepting your grace and salvation. Although most people should suffer forever in the lake of fire. Several practical personnel passing by cast contempt at this boring theory of gods and ghosts, and walked past this group of superstitions with a sneer. They may not realize it yet, but the survivors in this supermarket are indeed on the road to division. Chen Lu counted the number of superstitionists, and at present there are only 7 or 8 people. The number is still too small, so next, let's think of a way to continue to improve Alex's reputation. Thinking of this, Chen Lu said to Yingyan, I'll take a few people to the warehouse at the back to see if there are any zombies running in. You can take care of Alex's affairs. After finishing speaking, Chen Lu pointed to a few young men who were wearing very thick clothes and were also strong, and motioned for them to move with him. Chen Lu, who showed great strength in the previous round of battle, has become the second top spot among this group of survivors besides Hawkeye. A few young people followed him to the dim and messy warehouse without much thought. Go. Came to the warehouse behind and turned on the faintly bright light bulb. The air was filled with a musty smell. Under the yellow light, there was no sign of zombies invading. This is a matter of course, because Chen Lu didn't control the zombies to attack here at all, but it just didn't. Everyone, check if the wood board is loose or damaged. Look carefully, and report it to me as soon as you find any loopholes. Chen Lu commanded the young people who came with him, and ran to the windowsill and fumbled with his fingers planked to see if there are loopholes. Zombie Spirit Link. Chen Lu. Alex, what's the situation on your side? Alex. Hawkeye is trying to persuade me to tell me the secret to avoid being attacked by zombies, and I have fooled him. Chen Lu. Great. Are the props, files, compound bows, and corpses ready? Female infected. Master, everything is ready and ready to use. Chen Lu. Okay, I'm almost done here, let's make the second act a little bit crazier. The nails on the windowsill that firmly held the wooden boards were quietly pulled out one by Chen Li, and soon the fortifications on this window became meaningless furnishings. Afterwards, he deliberately stayed away from the window where his hands and feet were passive, and mentally controlled the zombies lurking outside waiting for the prey to be hooked. It didn't take too long. Soon a young man wearing a thick rugby uniform and a strong muscle man approached this window and checked the holes in the window defense according to Chen Lu's orders. He naturally found out that all the nails on it had been pulled out, and it was obviously not the handwriting of a zombie, but a certain survivor in the supermarket was messing up. This young man was shocked in a cold sweat. Is there someone among the survivors trying to let zombies in? Just when he turned around and thought of reporting this to Chen Lu called out his name in advance. Armstrong, your complexion is not so good, is there something wrong with it? Arms shook his head vigorously, and organized the language in a panic to explain his conjecture to Chen Lu. No, it's like this, Chen, I found out, Suddenly a zombie easily knocked open the wooden board from the window behind Armstrong and hugged him. Spreading terrifying teeth, he gnawed down at his shoulder, and dragged the poor guy out of the window. All this happened so suddenly that even the few companions standing next to Armstrong could not react. Instead, Chen Li, the farthest away from him, took the first action. Save me, Armstrong shouted hoarsely. Because the defense on the shoulders of the football uniform was very dense, the zombie's teeth could not break his flesh and blood. Chen Lu speeded up and sprinted, crossing the windowsill like a hurdler, and chasing Armstrong, who was dragged away by the zombies. At the same time, he turned his head and shouted to several people inside, Re-nail the board, don't let it go. The zombies come in. Suddenly a few zombies rushed out from the dark corner of the nearby building, surrounding him like they were deliberately trying to stop Chen Lu. Chen Lu had to slow down and drew out a pistol and shot these zombies headshot one by one. During this time, Armstrong was dragged into the alley by the zombies. Even though he didn't know how many zombies were still hidden at the corner, Chen Lu resolutely chased after him, and disappeared from the sight of the survivors with the zombies who had taken Armstrong away. A survivor who was so frightened by what was happening before his eyes looked around and asked, "Should we follow to catch up?" The other survivor immediately waved his hand and refused, lest the group of people would take their own risk out with a twitch of their brains. He hurriedly used the task given by Chen Lu as an excuse and said, "It's too dangerous. Come to guard the warehouse. Please trust Chen, after all, he came to us after passing through a large number of zombies." www.novelmtl.com. Although the so-called trust is just an excuse for these people to give up Chen Li, but it is very convincing. They have just witnessed the death of 2 companions in a zombie attack. They are full of fear outside, and no one wants to be a hero at this time. Should we tell Hawkeye? A survivor had a brainstorm and seemed to have the best of both worlds in mind. This idea was immediately recognized by everyone, and they nodded in agreement. Yes, Hawkeye will definitely be able to save the 2 of them back. I'll guard this gap, you guys go find Hawkeye. On the other hand, Chen Lu has caught up with Armstrong, who was carried away by the zombie, who is struggling to ask him for help with eager eyes. Chen Lu also speeded up his sprint and approached him, while comforting Armstrong and said, "It's okay. I'll take care of him." Chen Lu drew a sharp steel bar from the half-destroyed wall beside him, holding it tightly in both hands, like an ancient spearman, picking up the steel bar and struggling to stab it. Seeing Chen Lu bravely moving forward to resist the spirit of killing God, Armstrong seemed to see the hope of surviving for a moment. He smiled happily and cheered Chen Lu, "Yes. Stabbed it to death. Come on, Chen, you." The smile solidified on his face, and the sharp steel bars did not pierce the head of the zombie biting his shoulder as he expected, but penetrated his abdomen straightly. Blood spewed out like a faucet that opened the gate, and Armstrong fell to the ground feebly with a puzzled expression of sadness. Chen Lu waved his hand to the zombie who was dragging Armstrong, and drove it away like he was calling a god. Then he carefully pulled out the steel bar that had pierced Armstrong's abdomen, and he was splashed with a large pool of blood. Armstrong's chest is still undulating, which is proof that his breath is still alive. Perfect, just half his life left. Chen Lu smiled and looked at his masterpiece, tearing a large piece of fabric from the clothes he was wearing, and forcefully helped Armstrong bandage the wound, stopping the continuous surge. Blood out. Then he changed a silver steel needle from the index finger of his right hand and pierced Armstrong's armpit, leaving only a very inconspicuous needle port. Triggered by the virus. Target: Armstrong. The zombie virus has been injected successfully. Infected, no special mutation. The host will mutate into a normal zombie within 24 hours. The length of time depends on physique. A little like you can only end up like this. Chen Lu carried the seriously injured and unconscious Armstrong on his shoulders and helped him to walk slowly towards the supermarket step by step, still nagging, "Come here, Hawkeye. There is a lost track here. The little lamb is waiting for you to save." On the other hand, after the eagle eye in the supermarket heard the witness report, of course he picked up the compound bow and ran in the direction where Chen Lu was chasing. But before he took a few steps, he saw Chen Li staggering towards him with the unconscious Armstrong with difficulty, and a few zombies suddenly appeared behind him. Flew towards the 2. "Chen!" Hawkeye yelled to Chen Lu and drew his bow at the zombies who were chasing him. 3 sharp arrows flew out between the electric light and flint, and instantly took away the 3 zombies with a sharp sound of breaking through the air. Chen Lu also reluctantly took out his pistol, raised the gun with one hand and fired a few random shots at the zombies behind him. When he accidentally turned around, his feet were unstable, and arms fell heavily to the ground. "Don't worry, I'm here." Hawkeye stepped forward and took a breath and came to Chen Lu's side, blocking the 2 of them, pulling a bow and shooting arrows, shooting the remaining zombies one by one, and then pulling Chen Lu up from the ground. Chen Lu seemed to be exhausted, with large and small bruises left on his body, but he was not anxious to deal with his injuries but anxiously said to Hawkeye. Armstrong was stabbed through his abdomen by steel bars. I barely stopped the blood for him, but he is still very weak, we must treat him immediately. Wheezing will become like this, it's all my fault, I'm sorry, Hawkeye. No, you did a good job. Yingyan comforted Chen Lu and said. He knelt down to check Armstrong's wound. It was indeed a serious injury, only one step away from death. Hold on, boy, it took Chen a lot of effort to rescue you. Hawkeye, a princess, hugged Armstrong from the ground, and hurried to the supermarket gate in 3 steps and 2 steps. After Chen Lu took 2 breaths in the same place, he followed suit. The survivors in the supermarket saw the 3 return, and hurriedly opened the door to respond. In the sympathetic and scared eyes of the survivors, Hawkeye gently put Armstrong on the big bed in the bedding area on the first floor of the supermarket. The mattress was stained red by the blood flowing out. Chen Lu also came to the gate of the supermarket with difficulty. He looked as pale as a marathon runner who had just run dozens of kilometers, as if he couldn't stand still. The people who had been favored by him hurried over to support him and cast admiration on the brave boy. Just when everyone was sweating for Armstrong's life and death, a discordant voice sounded. It was Alex, who was sitting on the sidelines and watching coldly. He rushed over and shouted at Hawkeye extremely abnormally. Stay away from him. Don't approach this guy. He has accepted the Lord's punishment, his soul will be tortured forever, and his body will turn into a messenger of Satan and swallow the world. Throw him out. You shut up. He didn't get bitten. Chen Lu seemed to be unable to stand it anymore. He rushed up to Alex's face with his last bit of strength and punched him in the face. Fortunately, a group of survivors were watching. He held on, or the two might start fighting. At this moment, Hawkeye, who has been keeping a calm mind, nodded, waved his hand and said to the people around him, Alex is right. We need to check if he has been bitten. Please avoid it. I will not hide it. Hurt. Thanks to Hawkeye's good reputation all the time, everyone is willing to leave this kind of thing to him who is most trustworthy. The survivors who were responsible for pulling apart Chen Lu and Alex directly dragged away these 2 people who seemed a little bit irrational, and the others also left one after another, leaving only Hawkeye and Armstrong. Everyone gathered on the 2nd floor of the supermarket, waiting anxiously like family members waiting at the door of the operating room. If Armstrong was bitten, they would have no choice but to throw him outside, or even kill him cruelly first. As a friend in distress who has lived and died for so long, no one wants to see such a situation. God, save poor Armstrong. A survivor prayed religiously with his hands folded. God has already punished him. Alex still insisted on his thoughts reluctantly, stood up and spread his hands to preach to the crowd. His soul is gone, and the body that is left is nothing but devil's servant. These conversations can only make this place even more panic. A few minutes later, Hawkeye walked up the stairs expressionlessly, his hands already covered with blood. Everyone gathered around and looked at him expectantly, hoping that he could tell good news. I saw Hawkeye's eyes flashing a few times, and he sighed with relief. He was not bitten. Yeah, great. God bless. The crowd cheered as if they had won a protracted war, excited that they were finally free from an embarrassing moral choice. Hawkeye immediately raised his hand to signal everyone to calm down, and said with a worried look, Don't be too happy, Armstrong's injury is very serious, I don't know if he can persist. Is any of you a doctor? Quickly, go down and help. I studied medicine, and I will try my best to save him back. A young man with the appearance of a college student stood up and said. After speaking, he hurried down the stairs. Several classmates around him looked around for a moment, and quickly picked up the medicine box and followed along. Please save his life. It seems that Hawkeye is also exhausted physically and mentally. After leaving these words, he found a corner to sit down and rest, just sitting next to Chen Lu. It is said that the love of the robe on the battlefield can always create the deepest friendship. After 2 tribulations together, Hawkeye also trusts Chen Lu, a brave and kind-hearted young guy, more and more. While everyone was busy caring about Armstrong's situation, Chen Lu hurriedly collected information from Hawkeye about the actions taken by the U.S. government to deal with the virus outbreak. After all, the most precious thing in the 21st century is intelligence, and the identity of the Eagle Eye Shield agent is the biggest reason why Chen Lu is anxious to infect him. Eagle Eye, why hasn't the U.S. government sent troops to wipe out all these zombies and keep them trapped here? This is the most basic question as a survivor, and Chen Lu naturally intends to start with this question. In fact, Hawkeye is also annoying to be asked about this question. As a government agency agent, he certainly knows the embarrassment of the government, but most civilians will only use this as an excuse. Just when he wanted to go over it casually, he saw Chen Lu's serious eyes and suddenly felt that even if he told the truth, it might be understandable for someone with leadership ability like Chen Lu. So Hawkeye sighed lightly and told Chen Lu the actual situation. Because we still don't know the mechanism of this zombie virus, it is still unknown what kind of combat effectiveness the zombie still hides, so we rushed to send a small number of troops over. I'm afraid it will only create more zombies. Think about it, if we want to clean up all the zombies in Queens, then in order to avoid casualties, we need at least hundreds of thousands of troops. But to assemble such a huge army, a week, how can time be enough? The government is currently relocating overseas aircraft carrier battle groups. By then, at least 3 aircraft carrier combat formations will be stationed in New York to fight, but all of this will take some time. This is a war and not a trifling matter, my friend. Quote. Chen Lu nodded to express his understanding, and then asked, what about the vaccine? As long as the vaccine is developed, we don't have to be afraid of these zombies. The army can also boldly march in to rescue us. Vaccine. Hawkeye smiled bitterly, shook his head and said, Child, do you know how long it takes for humans to develop a virus vaccine? Although I don't know much about biology, I still know this, not to mention cracking a virus, even discovering a virus is a big problem. The World Health Organization has been fully researching a virus vaccine for this zombie virus, but just 7 days is too short for them. Yes, please trust them and give them more time. According to you, these zombies can't be eliminated in a short time. Chen Lu also laughed bitterly. Of course, in fact, he was happy. It's not that it can't be eliminated, but how much we need to pay. Hawkeye looked up at the ceiling and sighed helplessly. Although these things have happened countless times in the movie, once things happen in reality in China, we still find it difficult to make a choice. If these zombies madly attack the defense line laid by the military, then they might force the government to make a decision as soon as possible. But this group of zombies did not do so. Even I think they took the initiative to avoid the contact with the army's defenses, allowed the government to temporarily settle down and be unable to make a decision. What about countries other than the United States? Someone will always figure out a way. At this time, Chen Lu's question has already touched on issues in the diplomatic field, a bit involving state secrets. However, Hawkeye's grievances against the international community have reached a point where it is a bit intolerable. He did not hesitate and replied with a little excitement, other countries. Which do you mean, Russia, China or the European Union? Do you think they can have any good suggestions? Isn't it just using the pressure of national public opinion to force us to throw nuclear bombs into New York? Anyway, it is the United States that has suffered losses, and at the same time it can wipe out all the zombies. They really want to die for the best of these two things. New York is the #1 in our country. If a large city is bombed by a nuclear bomb, the history of the United States as the most powerful country in the world may be over. For those countries that have always hated the United States, what good ideas do you think they will give? So, the US government is planning to drop nuclear bombs in New York. Even that other countries are planning to drop nuclear bombs in New York. That is the last resort. What's more, there are still tens of millions of people in New York who have not yet been evacuated. Hawkeye was so excited that he almost jumped up. It seems that these things have been held back in his heart for a long time. He hit the ground with a punch and said unwillingly, unless the zombies' attack really forces the government to be too tight or even collapse, otherwise this method must not be used. Chen Lu said anxiously, it's hard to say. If the zombies break through the military's defenses, even if the US government refuses to launch nuclear bombs, other countries will throw them down in the name of righteousness. After all, it is a crisis for all mankind. Perhaps the international community is ready to sacrifice the entire nation of the United States. I will never allow my motherland to be a victim of saving mankind. Absolutely not, Hawkeye said with clenched fists and gritted teeth. But in fact, he himself knows that even if the United States is the world's largest power, its status in the international community cannot be higher than that of all mankind. If other countries see the situation wrongly and launch a nuclear bomb to New York, they might really get the support of most countries in the world. Okay, www.novelmtl.com, A brief summary is, zombies can be eliminated, but the US government is unwilling to pay too much, so it is under tremendous pressure from the international community. The US military is convening a large army, and vaccines are also being developed, but all this will take time. Throwing a nuclear bomb is the most effective solution, but whether the nuclear bomb should be thrown or who should be thrown is a matter that governments all over the world are arguing about. All of this is still in the middle of the calculation. Human beings are such a race that cannot give up infighting at any time. If the US government can decisively sacrifice its own national interests for the sake of all mankind, the zombie crisis may have been resolved long ago. However, this is impossible. Unless the attack of the zombie army completely collapses the US government, and then allows other countries to take over the United States to control the overall situation, the United States will eliminate the zombies at all costs. The US government is currently the umbrella of Chen Lu's zombie army, at least for the time being. When the interests of the United States are opposed to the interests of all mankind, disputes will inevitably occur. Such disputes cannot be resolved in just 1 week. Is really a delicate balance. Of course, Chen Lu is not to sit back and relax. The US Army is slowly gathering and the zombie virus vaccine is constantly being developed. These are all things he must find a way to solve. And being able to shed so many words from Hawkeye also made Chen Lu more determined to use his identity as a SHIELD agent to intercept intelligence for himself. The advantage and intelligence must be the #1 advantage Chen Lu must have to destroy the world. The strategic importance of the eagle-eye chess piece is self-evident. Basically, if you want to get out of the eagle's mouth, you have almost got it. The good news and bad news are half and half. However, Chen Lu's next plan was not yet time, so he continued to talk with Yingyan and continued to build a good relationship with him. Hawkeye, if New York is really dropped by the United States itself or other countries, the United States will not really be finished, right? Hawkeye sneered, as if mocking Chen Lu's naive thoughts. He stretched out his fingers and pointed to the land under his feet and said seriously, New York is the United States. No, it's the world's largest economic center. Excellent financial talents almost represent the lifeblood of the entire US economy. If New York is destroyed by a nuclear bomb, the financial earthquake caused by this event will be enough to make the US face bankruptcy overnight. The immediate aftermath of the economic collapse will also lead to the collapse of the political system, the collapse of social order, the loss of a large number of people, and other serious consequences will have a series of chain effects that will completely destroy the United States. So you should understand how much awareness is needed to launch a nuclear bomb. Does this mean to protect humanity or protect America? I don't want to admit it, but it is true. However, as far as the US government is concerned, before the situation is completely out of control, it will never allow the abandonment of the United States in order to protect all mankind. Hawkeye stretched out his hand and patted Chen on the shoulder of Lee. He smiled and comforted him. Just give the US military a little more time so that they can assemble their superior forces. The zombies here will die to death. The vaccine can be studied even if it takes a little longer. Zombie virus, the doomsday will come sooner or later, and it's impossible for the situation to get worse. Don't worry, Hawkeye, I will try my best to make it worse. Chen Lu smiled to himself in his heart. But since Hawkeye can fight against the whole world for the United States, can he fight against all mankind for the sake of his relatives? It's really a thing worth trying. This kind of desperate words can't be said to everyone. Before Hawkeye asked him to keep it secret, Chen Lu said first. Hawkeye nodded in relief. Yes, it's fine if you understand. Hey, guys, something has happened. One of the few medical students who went down just now ran up the stairs in a panic, breathlessly reported to Eagle Eye Way. Eagle Eye, Armstrong, he is going to die soon. The atmosphere suddenly became tense again, and Hawkeye immediately stood up and signaled everyone to be quiet, and hurriedly followed the medical students down the floor. Under the dim light, the medical student who was the first to come down just now was bandaging the terrifying wounds on Armstrong with his head sweating profusely. Judging from his face, the situation was quite bad. What's the matter? Looking at the serious and helpless expressions of everyone in charge of the caregiver, Hawkeye asked in as calm a tone as possible. The wound has been infected with bacteria. His current physical strength is unable to handle the next series of complications. The wound is also very severely torn and must be sutured. But the problem is that we only have the most basic emergency medical treatment here. Tools, it is impossible to provide effective treatment. The medical student who was in charge of shouting Eagle Eyes down said in a heavy and sad tone. I finally saved him. Hawkeye knows a little bit about wound treatment and other things, and understands that Armstrong will really be hopeless if this goes on. The people who were still ecstatic that Armstrong was not bitten by the zombies before fell silent. It seems that they were too happy too early. If Armstrong were to die in the end, the people who cheered just now looked like fools. Everyone's nervousness was once again connected with Armstrong. God, save this poor man. He has suffered so much, please have mercy on him. Is there no way? Yes. Chen Lu on the side suddenly opened up and caught everyone's attention. He pointed his finger out the window, isn't the thing we want right there? Everyone followed the direction of Chen Lu's fingers and looked out. There is a large pharmacy opposite the supermarket, which is only one street away. However, the road between the two buildings is already covered with zombies, and it is unknown how many zombies are hidden in that eerie building. It's too dangerous. Someone immediately came out to warn Chen Lu. Chen Lu smiled disapprovingly. Danger. When I carried Armstrong back from the mouth of a group of zombies, it was several times more dangerous than this. Another person objected pessimistically. But even if we find drugs, we may not be able to save Armstrong back, and we may even sacrifice more people. So you have to give him up. Chen Lu suddenly raised his volume. He dexterously jumped to the supermarket counter and made himself stand up high. Tell me, this is the United States. It's not given by the government, but we have to fight for it ourselves. If every time we say that we might pay a higher price and don't act, then who will help us get into trouble alone in the future of us? Maybe we ourselves are the people abandoned by the army, but don't we just say that we can also give up our companions and even ourselves? What about the American spirit you talk about all day long? Just when everyone was silent about Chen Lu's speech, Hawkeye took the lead and said, I will go with you. You were right, this is America. Thank you, Hawkeye. Chen Lu stretched out his hand to the kind superhero, and Hawkeye did not hesitate to put his hand on it. Child, you are like a senior whom I respect very much. His name is Captain America. It's my pleasure. Seeing the two most charismatic individuals in the entire team of survivors led by example, the sense of justice in the hearts of these young Americans who have received human rights education from an early age is uncontrollably incited. A medical student who was still desperate just now rushed over with a firm and brave expression, put his hand on the back of the two of them, and resolutely said, Add me. Count me 1, 2. You can't miss me. God bless America. More and more palms were put together, and in a blink of an eye, the Armstrong Rescue Squad gathered together under the instigation of Chen Lu's American spirit. At this moment, everyone is full of confidence, looking at the big pharmacy opposite, which symbolizes hope, with a fearless expression. At this moment, it seems that nothing can stop them. Looking at these great young men gearing up in front of them, Chen Lu shouted like a slogan, for the American spirit, for our faith. For the American spirit, for our faith. Just as everyone was determined to fight to the death to save Armstrong, a discordant voice came again. It was Alex with a cold expression who stood up and poured cold water on everyone. You are trying to be an accomplice of the devil. You are blaspheming the Lord's punishment. You will never be forgiven. Only the obedient can follow the Lord's messenger to bliss. Don't bother with that lunatic. Chen Lu glanced at him disdainfully, then turned his head to discuss with the medical student casually. You need antibiotics, suture needles, hemostatic cotton, and more bandages. Did I miss anything? Ah, that's enough. Thank you for stepping up every time we need it most, Chen. In addition, this time, Chen Lu is already the third time he has done his best to save people from fire and water. Naturally, he admired him a lot. Okay, let's go. I don't know when, the position of leader of this group of survivors has changed from Hawkeye to Chen Lu. It's no wonder that compared to the Eagle Eye who is always cold, talk less and do more, Chen Lu, who is willing to deal with everyone, is more likely to arouse respect for him. The speech on the American spirit just now won the Eagle Eye. Evaluation of the degree, who is the leader position. But no one knew that their approved leader was secretly planning to kill each of them. The final game of La Chen's plan is approaching step by step. A squad consisting of 10 people rushed out of the supermarket door swiftly and quietly. After a brief observation, it quickly crossed the road full of zombies and came to the door of the large pharmacy opposite. There is no generator operating here, and there is a darkness that can't be seen. A few faint yellow flashlights shot in from the gate, making this dilapidated building even more terrifying. Hawkeye turned his head and warned the other team members, "I will play the forward, you follow me, don't fall behind." "Understood." Chen Lu, who was standing at the back of the team, replied in front of everyone. The 10-person team was walking through the narrow aisles in a straight line, and a hideous zombie might suddenly come out at every corner around it. But even in the darkness, Hawkeye still exerts his ability to perceive that is different from ordinary people. No matter where it is from, the zombies hidden in hidden corners will be shot instantly by Hawkeye as soon as it appears, unless it is completely indifferent. Move. After all, Hawkeye is basically the one with the strongest anti-sneak attack capability in the Avengers. In the movie, Avengers 2, Ultron Origins, Black Widow, Captain America, Thor and the Scarlet Witch of Hulk, who had made a sneak attack on Hawkeye, was shot in the forehead by the old hunter Hawkeye who had seen everything in advance. Except for Spider-Man, who has a superpower plug-in like spider induction, the strongest anti-sneak attack in the Avengers is the turn of the out-and-out, ordinary person, Hawkeye. This is also the reason why Alex reluctantly said that the success rate of the sneak attack was 0. Under the leadership of Hawkeye, the team quickly found the medicine they needed unharmed, but in addition to the medicine, they also found another thing under Chen Lu's reminder, the corpses of several soldiers. These soldiers wear the standard uniforms of regular American soldiers. The piles of several people together seem to be protecting something. The guns in their hands have traces of fire. They should have experienced a fierce battle before death. The most noticeable thing is that a dead body in a doctor's white coat among the soldiers, pressing tightly on his chest, seems to be protecting something. Boom, boom, quote. Chen Lu did not hesitate to fire on these lying dead corpses continuously, and shot them all on their foreheads to make sure that these were real corpses, then said to the people standing in front of him, "It seems that these soldiers are trying to take some big man back, but none of this has anything to do with us. Go and pick up their guns, and search the doctor's body. There may be any useful medicine. Hawkeye, you be responsible for the vigilance." A few young guys walked up according to Chen Lu's instructions, and searched for the bodies of these soldiers. As they wished, from the pile of corpses they obtained a few grenades and military assault rifles that had not been shot. And the young man who was in charge of searching the doctor found a rather unknown result. He opened the corpse and held his chest tightly, reached in and touched it. He didn't find anything like a pill box or pills at his fingertips, but pulled out a stack of simple bound files. Originally, he thought that this kind of thing in the file would not be of any use, and was thinking about throwing it away at a casual glance. However, when he saw the title of the file, his face suddenly changed and his mouth trembled, but he couldn't speak. "Come." The companion next asked him, "What's wrong with you?" Only then did he react as if he had first awakened from a dream, and quickly hid the files in his arms with exactly the same movements as the corpse, and dealt with unfavorably, "No, nothing, there is nothing on this doctor. Let's go." Chen Lu, who was at the back of the team, took it all into his eyes, with a cold smile on his face, but it only disappeared after less than half a second. Now that they found the file, the goal of this trip has been achieved. Before the curtain ends, let's stage a scene of death. Ow! The howl of the zombies suddenly came from all directions, and in an instant this 10-person team discovered that they had been wrapped up in a big circle by the zombies. In this large pharmacy with countless obstacles, which is conducive to the hiding of zombies, I don't know how many zombies are hidden. In short, at this moment, they charged toward everyone together like a unified order. Retreat. Seeing that the goal was achieved, Chen Lu decisively ordered that this happen to cater to everyone's ideas. Everyone in the team raised their guns and retreated in the direction of the pharmacy gate while firing. Hawkeye simply converted the compound bow into a melee mode, and dared to rush up to fight with a dozen zombies at the same time. While having some free time in the battle, he instructed everyone, "You go first, I will follow soon. If others say this, I am afraid that in the next second they will become a martyr who sacrificed the ego." It's a pity that the superhero Hawkeye was broken this time. With the slow actions of ordinary zombies, it is impossible to get close to Hawkeye's body. Not to mention the teeth, even the fingers can't reach it. It is just a slight delay for the number of eagles to come together. The action of the eye is nothing more. I am afraid that even if he is surrounded by a million zombies, Hawkeye has a way to kill himself by himself with a bow and arrow. This is his terrifying strength as a superhero. Fortunately, the target of Chen Lu's attack this time was not him, but the group of ignorant young guys. Dividing line. Regarding the development rhythm of this book, the author Jun wants to say a few words to everyone. I believe that many readers think that the recent plot structure is too small and does not have the magnificent momentum of destroying the world. That's because in the author's outline setting, the zombie virus was not a human opponent at all at the beginning. From the protagonist Chen Lu to the zombie army to the virus itself is not enough to destroy the world at the beginning. This is the basic setting. Therefore, the protagonist, zombies, and virus must continue to grow stronger in order to achieve the goal of destroying the world, which also laid the foundation for the evolution of the outline of the book from a small pattern to a larger pattern. I hope to show the continuous development of the protagonist and the zombie forces. Therefore, I am sorry for the book friends who hope to see the rapid outbreak of total war and the destruction of mankind in a blink of an eye. I want to grasp the rhythm of this book to avoid its rapid collapse. I hope you understand. While Hawkeye was busy dealing with the zombies coming from behind the team, Chen Lu hurriedly manipulated other zombies that had been lurking in advance to rush towards the other people in the medicine squad. In the roar of gunfire, zombies were killed by headshots, but there were still a few zombies who successfully crossed the line of fire and pounced on the team with a strong smell of blood. Boom! Chen Lu threw a grenade he had picked up from a soldier's corpse. The strong air wave caused by the explosion sent the standing people to the ground in one breath, and the large amount of dust that was blown up made the situation even worse. Confusion. The smell of gunpowder, the smell of blood, the blurry vision ahead, and the eardrum that was tinnitus by the explosion, all around became indistinguishable, and even the zombies rushed over without real feeling. These American youths who have not experienced the real battlefield suddenly lost their sense of measure. Swish, swish, swish. A few bursts of air accompanied by a small black shadow galloping, piercing the back of the head one by one and killing the zombies charging towards Chen Lu and others. It was Hawkeye who had got rid of the dozen or so zombies that had entangled him at some point, holding the blood-stained composite bow and shooting arrows repeatedly, shooting the zombies to the ground one after another from the rear. "Are you okay?" Hawkeye shouted and approached the team, shooting a few arrows behind him without looking back. These sharp arrows are like missiles that can track automatically, and none of them missed the zombies that sneaked over from behind Hawkeye. Is simply not the sensory ability that humans should have. With the protection of Hawkeye, it doesn't make sense for Chen Lu to continue directing the zombie attack, it just increases casualties in vain. He had to order the remaining zombies to keep lurking and stop showing their heads as targets for Hawkeye. I also took a few young people who were so frightened to go out of the big pharmacy, and hurried back to the supermarket gate with them in a panic. Although Hawkeye's strength did disrupt some of Chen Lu's plans, it was harmless. Now the layout of the survivor team in the supermarket has been completely collapsed. When the 10-man team fled back to the supermarket embarrassedly, the faces of these young people no longer had the kind of fighting spirit and awe-inspiring they had at the beginning. Every one of them knew that they had really closed the dead door just now, and it could even be said that they were regretting their decision just now. Oh my God, it's so risky. I almost got bitten. I will never go to that ghost place again. Once you realize how terrifying this is, it is estimated that no matter who asks them to go out for an adventure next time, no one will stand up no matter how generous they are. And those who stayed in the supermarket, seeing the appearance of this expedition squad, could probably understand that it was a dead end outside. This supermarket is the only safe place, and they are deeply aware of this again. But the medicine to treat Armstrong finally got back, and the medical students can finally show their fists. Now everyone can only pray that Armstrong will really survive, otherwise the efforts of this group of young people to gamble their lives will be wasted. You refused to admit your sins and tried to conceal the truth from the Lord. Only then will you be punished like this. The blasphemers should go to hell, so that we mortals can receive the atonement and be forgiven. Needless to say, only Alex can say this kind of magical words. However, the survivors reacted more and more enthusiastically to his theory of ghosts and spirits. After a series of rumors spread, almost everyone has heard about the weird behavior of zombies when facing Alex, combined with him from coming in. From the beginning, they kept saying prophetic words, and more people joined the superstition. Now only the last straw of the camel is bent, and this straw has been brought back. A squad member who had just escaped in the pharmacy summoned his friends in a sneaky manner, and they ran to a corner invisible to everyone. He took out the previous file in the arms of the doctor who seemed to be protected by the army. Circulate to some of his friends. Brothers, I don't know what to say. Anyway, this is a big deal. Gosh, how dare they do this? Ben, if we knew all this, we might all be the ones who should be killed. Chen Lu knew what they were talking about, because he ordered the infected female to forge this file. The content is actually very simple, but it is just some experimental records about zombie viruses. Of course, some false elements have been added, such as the US military number, the 51 area experimental base and so on. How else can this group of people understand? Chen Lu has chosen all the spearheads for them. However, since this file is actually very crudely forged, if someone with experience, such as Hawkeye, is given 100 reasons to explain that this military file is forged. Therefore, Chen Lu still has a job to do, and that is to prevent Eagle Eye from seeing this file. www.novelmtl.com, what are you talking about? Chen Lu pretended to pass by carelessly, and suddenly broke in and joined the discussion of this group of people. Found that their private party was broken by someone, these young people were shocked, but when they realized that the person was Chen Lu, they were still relieved. The young man who brought the file back handed the file to Chen Lu anxiously and said, Chen, you must not tell other people. I just found this thing on the body of the doctor in the pharmacy. Chen Lu took the file, and when he saw the title, he looked aside. But he didn't hesitate at all, took out a lighter and lit the file to the ground without saying anything. The flames slowly swallowed all the words and burned it into unrecognizable ashes. Chen, what are you doing? The young man asked loudly. Seeing that this forged file was completely burned, Chen Lu said indifferently, please treat it as it does not exist. Knowing these things is not good for us. Now what we should think about is how to persevere until we get help from the military. So far, rather than arguing about who should bear the responsibility. This group of young people who knew the secret seemed even more disturbed. One of them worriedly asked, since this virus was developed by the army, will they come to save us? They study such horrible things, then forget it. Why did it leak out so accidentally? A sarcastic smile appeared on Chen Lu's face, and he said coldly, thinking that you can control all power and rob each other, for this is a problem that humans will never be able to correct. Even if it is dangerous enough to destroy the world, as long as it is advantageous. It is impossible to be completely banned by humans. We should be thankful that this is a virus created by the military. If this is a masterpiece of private enterprises, I am afraid that the virus would have spread all over the world. In short, under Chen Lu's persuasion, these young people who knew the truth finally stopped the discussion and broke up to do all kinds of things that should be done. Even though they all agreed to keep this matter secret and not tell others before the dissolution, how easy is it to let several people keep together such a big secret that has no interest disputes with them? In less than 10 minutes, Chen Lu was keenly aware that the rumors he had carefully planned had spread. This is too easy. Whether it is to plant the virus outbreak on the US government or let such rumors spread inadvertently, it is too easy to achieve in this small society. People are always willing to believe only what they are willing to believe, and use evidence and logic to verify the authenticity of these things. Most people don't take it seriously. This black pot has been firmly detained on the head of the US government. Hawkeye noticed that the people around him looked something wrong with him. Before, everyone had always respected him. Even when it comes to rescue issues that are sensitive, after all, they are not too excited. However, this time, everyone had a complicated expression when facing him, and there were even a few superstitious people with unconcealed disgust on their faces. What happened? Hawkeye grabbed a person who admired him the most before, who happened to be the young man who had just participated in the discussion about the military file. Hawkeye grabbed this guy by the collar and pulled him to look at him directly. Asked, Bobby, what happened? Hawkeye, have you not heard of it? These zombie viruses are produced by the US military. Everything is the government's own crime. Enough, Hawkeye roared when he heard the words, naturally alarming all the survivors in the supermarket. He faced all the suspicious and complicated gazes of all of them and asked loudly, "Who spread the rumors?" "I dare to use mine. The identity of the agent guarantees that the government has not conducted any research work on zombie viruses." Everyone looked at each other, still lacking trust in their eyes. After a minute of awkward silence, the young man who brought the forged file back lowered his head and replied, "It was me. I found a file of the military research on zombie virus from the corpse of the doctor in the pharmacy. I'm very sorry, Hawkeye, but everyone should have the right to know the truth. Americans' obsession with the right to know is quite terrifying. No matter how cruel and dirty the truth is, they will definitely pursue it. No one would question whether all of this should be known to the public. Anyway, let everyone know first. But in other words, as long as someone is willing to believe it, it doesn't matter whether it is the truth or not." Hawkeye naturally understands this truth. His first reaction is of course to ask the young man, "Where is that file?" "I'm sure it must not be true. The military secret file is not as simple as you think, and it is even less likely to appear in such a bizarre place. Just show me. It was burned by me." Chen Lu immediately stood up and interrupted Hawkeye's words, and explained with a slightly apologetic expression in the other's surprised eyes, "I'm sorry that this happened. I didn't want this to happen. Things spread. After all, knowing these things is not good for us. But it just happened." Chen Lu's remarks are considered to be an acquiescence that the government is responsible for the zombie virus outbreak. At the same time, in Hawkeye's eyes, he was just a little impulsive young guy who was kind to do bad things, and didn't realize that this was Chen Lu deliberately planting blame on the US government. The forged military files were burned to ashes. This is because there is not enough evidence to clear the suspicion for the US government, even if there are 100 counter-arguments in Hawkeye's mind, and the so-called jumping into the Yellow River can't be cleared. "Yes, it's them. They did it all. They drew the Lord's anger and implicated all of us." An angry but unhurried voice came from behind everyone. Everyone looked back. It was the Alex who had always liked to squat in the corner, standing up, his eyes staring straight like the eyes of a poisonous snake. Looking at the eagle eye, he stretched out his finger to volley and aimed at the eagle eye's forehead. "You have always known the truth, but you are pretending to be innocent to deceive us. It is a pity that the Lord knows all this, and he chooses to let you reap the consequences. You have violated the taboo, touched something you should never understand, and refused to admit it." Quote, "Shut up, Alex." Chen Lu interrupted Alex with a loud shout, but this time he did not impulsively go up to the ground to teach him, but seemed to be holding back his anger and explaining to everyone, "Everyone. Can you still believe in Hawkeye? From the moment the disaster broke out, he stayed here to guard you, and even gave the helicopter that came to rescue him to the wounded and children. When Armstrong and I were in trouble, it was again he stepped forward to take us out of the siege. Just now, he took the risk to take the team to the pharmacy to get the medicine, struggling to ensure that each of us can survive, and he also stabilized Armstrong's injury. You have to vote for such a person. With doubt, then who in the world is worthy of trust?" Chen Lu's speech awakened some people's sanity. This is really due to Hawkeye's long-term pioneering battles and a lot of efforts to survive this group of survivors. However, there are still many people who choose to stand behind Alex, looking at Yingyan, Chen Lu and others in confusion and doubt, and are no longer willing to continue to be with the government's running dogs. After Chen Lu expressed his opinion, Alex also turned to his followers and proclaimed his doctrine loudly, "Guardian. He is guarding us. It doesn't matter, because the government often says to us like this, everything they do is to protect the interests of American citizens. But you have seen what they did in the glamorous, Guardian, execution. Explore the secrets of life and cross the bottom line of the Lord, leading to all of us being punished here. The trial has arrived, and the desecrators will turn into demons and bring suffering to the world, and all of this, yes, it is their fault. They did it and blasphemed the Almighty." The crowd was instigated without suspense. The gaze that was originally full of suspicion quickly turned into a hateful sight under Alex's instigation, and even a few believers couldn't bear to rush over to stab the eagle eye. This culprit is now. At this time, the number of practical and superstitionists was almost equal, completely splitting this group of survivors into two factions. Seeing that the situation was about to get out of control, Chen Lu immediately stood up in front of Hawkeye, opened his hands and shouted to many superstitions, "You are enough. What blasphemy! Everything is anyone's fault, I can't understand a word. I know that our lives were given by Hawkeye, you ungrateful villains. Have you forgotten? If there was no Hawkeye just now, Armstrong would have died long ago. Seeing that Chen Lu brought the topic to Armstrong, Alex immediately answered with a cold smile, you think you can save someone who deserves to be judged? No, you just brought one back. It's just a devil. Ah! A scream came from the direction where Armstrong was, and it immediately affected the nerves of all the survivors. Chapter 31. Everyone hurriedly looked at where Armstrong was, but found that the bed was empty. Take a closer look. On the other side of the bed, a figure wearing a rugby uniform really knelt down on the ground, bowed his head under the bed and ate something. The sound of flesh and blood being chewed was heard little by little, and everyone couldn't help it. Kind of a tingling sensation on the scalp. Armstrong. After hearing this call, the figure slowly turned around, the rotten muscles on his face slowly showed up, the cracked corners of the mouth were like a grim smile, and the intestines and other debris came from his teeth. Sliding up, the bloodshot eyeballs seemed to fall from the eye sockets at any time, and all the cyan blood vessels gathered on the face and emerged. This scene is completely a demonic scene of hell, spreading the breath of fear to everyone who witnessed this scene. Oh, my goodness. Do not. Sadness, fear, sympathy, anger and other emotions were all aroused at the same time, and an unprecedented great commotion was initiated in the crowd. However, the zombies don't look at the atmosphere. Taking advantage of the fact that most people did not react, this zombie once named Armstrong swooped towards the crowd like a wolf that saw a flock of sheep. Woo! The first thing that reacted to fight back was Hawkeye, a superhero determined to protect everyone here. He opened his bow and drew an arrow to launch a series of actions in one go, and an arrow shot through Armstrong's head as if it were fired. The arrow went in from his forehead and out from behind his head, and Armstrong followed the broken puppet. General fell to the ground and stopped moving under everyone's gaze. Sorry, Armstrong. Except for an apology, Hawkeye didn't know what to say. Yes, you should be sorry that you killed an innocent life for yourself. After his prediction was confirmed, Alex's accusation of Hawkeye became more justified, and at the same time even more exaggerated, if it's not that you study the zombie virus. If it were not that you violated the Lord's will, this young man should have been playing rugby leisurely. Everyone here should live their lives happily. It's you who made our lives. It's a mess. It is you who caused the world to be punished by the Lord. Kill him. Finally, under Alex's instigation, a mad believer yelled. A large group of bewildered survivors turned to Hawkeye, the superhero who had guarded them for a whole week, and tried their best to give up to save themselves and to ensure the survival of everyone here, sending out a signal of hatred and killing. Kill him. Throw him out. Go to hell, the government's running dog. More and more people responded to this call for killing. This group of people who had been taken down by the Eagle Eye alone, who should have been grateful to him, passed by less than 2 hours after Alex. After brainwashing and preaching, they all sharpened their knives and walked toward the Eagle Eye, and those eyes that hate hatred, they all want to peel the Eagle Eye. Hey, are you all crazy? Do you know what you are doing? Practitioners headed by Chen Lu and others immediately surrounded the Eagle Eye group and formed a wall of people in front of him to separate the Eagle Eye from the crazy believers. There are even a few timid people who have already raised it. The firearms in his hands threatened the crazy believers not to let them approach. Now the number of superstitious and practical factions is close to 2-1, and those who maintain Eagle Eyes are at an absolute disadvantage in terms of numbers. Everyone, I use my personality to guarantee that this zombie virus was really not made by the government. That file is forged, I can prove. Hawkeye also tried hard to explain to the people who besieged him, but those fanatics have long been unable to listen to the words of their saviors. Alex pressed toward the Eagle Eye and continued to fan the flames and said, those who try to defend sinners should lead the same sin. They are all sinners who try to violate the Lord's will, and they are all wicked men who have offended the Almighty Lord. As long as they are alive, the trial will not end. No, calm down. If Hawkeye gets serious, this group of superstitious people will definitely not be his opponents, and even everyone here together will not be better than a Hawkeye. But the question is, will Hawkeye have the heart to attack them? No, he won't, so he can only be calculated to death by Chen Lu. Now, it is time to light the final fuse. Alex, I have had enough of you. Chen Lu raised his pistol, roared hysterically, aimed at Alex's chest, and pulled the trigger. Boom! The loud gunfire and the dazzling fire shocked everyone present. The bright blood exploded on Alex's chest, and the impact of the bullet made his body lean back weakly, lying on the floor in the cross posture of Jesus' crucifixion. The gunpowder smoke rose slowly from the muzzle, and there was no regret in Chen Li's eyes. What did you do? Hawkeye was also shocked by Chen Lu's behavior, and asked him inexplicably. Chen Lu just replied coldly, I warned you, Alex will kill everyone here. God Envoy. A believer knelt down beside Alex crying like a dead father and mother, tightly holding Alex's palm with both hands and praying with his eyes closed. Other believers also have unbelievable expressions, and a series of emotions such as grief, despair, and hatred are constantly changing on their faces. Believers of the Lord. Alex turned his head and said to the believers who came to him, as if holding his last breath, they once again failed the Lord's kindness, cough cough cough. Those sinners must be punished before we can be saved. Children, we need atonement. Alex's palm slipped between the believer's fingers, fell to the floor and stopped moving. He closed his eyes peacefully, and the blood from the wound slowly stained the floor, like a picture full of religious significance. The bodies of the believers next to him were trembling constantly, and tears fell to the ground in large drops and mixed with the blood. The sound of sobbing spread to every corner of the supermarket, infecting every believer present, making their eyes moist. Hawkeye seemed to have a premonition of what would happen next, and quickly put away his bow and arrow, raised his hands and shouted to everyone, everyone, calm down. Chen Lu is just too impulsive. Put your weapons away, hurry up. However, it was too late. The believer who was crying for Alex suddenly turned his face to them, and his tear-stained face instantly became stubborn, with hatred toward the eagle eye and the Chen Lu who defended him. Ripped his throat and roared. Atonement! Atonement! A large group of believers shouted enthusiastically, their angry emotions infected each of them, and a crazy expression appeared on each of them. The sound of bullets being loaded was heard everywhere. Many people have realized what is going to happen next, but they have long been unable to stop them, so they can only find a cover to hide. Calm down, everyone. Hawkeye kept his hands up and tried his best to stop this disaster from happening. Don't waste your time. Chen Lu on the side swooped and pressed the eagle eye to the ground. Almost at the same time, the fanatical believers pulled the trigger. Da. Boom, bang, bang, boom. In an instant, the ears were filled with the loud noise of assault rifles, pistols, and grenades. The rain of guns and bullets flying everywhere instantly turned this supermarket into a fierce battlefield, but the last time humans worked together to fight against zombies, this time it was two waves. The survivors killed each other mercilessly. The bullets flying horizontally shattered various commodities and brought up a large amount of sawdust. Even the light appeared dim under the strong gunfire. The smoke of gunpowder filled the entire supermarket, and people's screams and killing became the main theme here, and the crisp sound of glass cracking was the passionate accompaniment. The blood mist exploded on the human body, as if a bright rose was blooming, a grenade exploded several people into pieces like ripped rags, and the fleshy limbs spilled all over the floor. In this war, people who lost their minds or kept their minds have become big losers. The only vested interests are Chen Lu who planned everything and Alex who was lying on the ground playing dead. The most innocent among them is naturally the eagle eye that has turned from the much anticipated superhero to the target. All his previous efforts to save this group of survivors were all in vain. Until now, with gunfire roaring and killing all over the country, Hawkeye has never understood what it is that this group of survivors, who had been united and worked together to fight against zombies, turned into killing each other in just 2 hours. Ruthless killer. Why didn't this group of people fall under the attack of the zombies in the end, but were bombarded and killed by the group of people in need? None of them are bad guys. Hawkeye, who has been with them for a week, is sure to come to a conclusion, but in just 2 hours, everything has changed. Hawkeye might regret that he didn't pay attention to this strange man Alex at first, but never expected that the old rules of good intentions to do bad things again and again, those actions that inspire contradictions are the things that make things develop to this day. The key to the ground. Even now, Eagle Eye believes that Chen Lu is a good and trustworthy partner. Hawkeye, we must get out of here. Chen Lu shot a few shots at the crazy people. Of course, they evoked a more fierce counterattack. There were dozens of bullet holes on the shelves that were used as bunkers. You two don't want to hurt them, right? Chen Lu's words pierced into Hawkeye's heart. It was indeed his unwillingness to act that led to the intensification of the firefight, but how could Hawkeye be so ruthless to hurt these comrades who shared his adversity? He looked around. Except for Chen Li, those who defended him in front of him were basically shot to the ground and stopped breathing in the first round of firefight. Now those crazy believers are still chanting, atonement. But they hurt each other and blinded by the cult unless they kill to the last living person, otherwise this cruel gunfight will go on endlessly. Except for Chen Lu, Yingyan has no one to save. Okay, Chen, listen to my signal and close your eyes when I count to 3. Despite the immense grief in his heart, and despite the confusion in his mind, Hawkeye had no time to hesitate, so he took out his bow and arrow again, draw out a ball-shaped arrow and place it on the string. 1, 2, 3. Woo! A cloud-piercing arrow pierced the ceiling, and at the moment it hits, it emits a strong white light that is dozens of times more dazzling than the sun and envelopes the entire supermarket. Even Chen Lu, who closed his eyes in advance, can feel the tingling and terrifying eyes. Light. Suddenly, screams resounded throughout the supermarket, and the people in the fierce exchange of fire yelled and covered their eyes. Taking this opportunity, Hawkeye ran out of the supermarket with Chen Lufei. Less than a quarter of an hour after the two left the supermarket, the gunfire inside flashed again, and fierce gunfire kept coming out, turning the originally safe and peaceful supermarket into a more terrifying than the zombies outside. The group of survivors finally destroyed themselves under the guidance of Chen Lu and Alex, and Hawkeye could only go to the rescue point where the helicopter was about to arrive by himself as in Chen Lu's plan. Chen Lu is not a human being. Can we still be saved? Chen Lu pretended to be worried and asked Hawkeye, actually asking about the progress of the helicopter's arrival. Hawkeye patted his shoulder, nodded seriously and said, Chen, I will definitely save you. I swear. But these zombies, you come with me, we'll have a rescue helicopter to pick us up in about half an hour, and then we will be able to go home safely. Half an hour, there is still enough time. Chen Lu continued to figure out his plan. Next, as long as he arrived at the helicopter rescue point with Hawkeye, and then figured out a way to attack him, let S.H.I.E.L.D. pick up a virus-infected Hawkeye that had not mutated into a zombie, and the work was done. With the current level of Hawkeye's trust in Chen Lu, even if he was vigilant, he would never have thought that the attack would come from his closest comrade in arms. Around, another group of zombies suddenly emerged from the dark corner and rushed toward the two of them. Chen Lu hurriedly raised his gun and fired, and Hawkeye also switched the bow and arrow to the scepter mode to guard Chen Lu to prevent him from being hurt. After all, Chen Lu is currently the only person Yingyan wants to save. Only if he is still alive can Yingyan believe that his previous week's efforts have not been in vain. I have run out of ammunition. Chen Lu threw the 9mm pistol that shot the bullet at any time, looking around as if looking for a handy melee weapon. After scanning a few back and forth, his eyes stopped at the arrow behind the eagle eye. On the bag, Hawkeye, can I defend myself with 2 arrows? Take it yourself. Hawkeye was busy dealing with the zombies in front of him, so he had to hand the back to Chen Lu to let him take the arrow himself. At the same time, he warned, the one on the far right is the explosive arrow, don't touch it. Take the one on the far left, then it's an ordinary arrow. Okay. Chen Lu put his finger on the far right and then moved to the leftmost arrow, drew out 2 ordinary arrows, grabbed them in his hands, and used them as 2 daggers. And the technique used is quite good. Just sticking at the attacking zombie can pierce the arrow from the opponent's eye socket straight through the back of the head, terminating the zombie's life. Of course, this accidental Hawkeye just thought he was lucky. Hawkeye's fierce fighting power, the dozens of zombies that attacked were nothing to be afraid of, and they were smashed into cracked corpses in a few strokes. From his fighting style, it can be seen that Hawkeye's heart is also full of anger. The original elegant fighting skills without any extra moves have become a violent fighting method like opening and closing, with broken limbs under his hands. Bone full of bones, grumpy like a beast. Hawkeye, are you okay? Chen Lu asked concerned. Fortunately, Hawkeye's mind is still calm. No, I'm fine, just give me time to be quiet. Let's go. Along the way, Chen Lu did not send a large number of zombies to attack, at most he let a few zombies come out and die to avoid suspicion. The news of Alex also came from the zombie spirit link. The people who stayed in the supermarket frantically and killed each other had stopped fighting, and the last person standing was easily killed by him. The 40 survivors who stubbornly fought for a week, all declared dead, most of them died at their own hands. Everything is proceeding as planned. Hawkeye took Chen Lu to the top of a building, and took out a special-shaped arrow from his body. As soon as it was inserted into the ground, the arrow's tail spread out into the shape of an antenna, dripping, signal. At the same time, Hawkeye turned around and blocked Chen Lu's sight with his body, and quietly took out something that looked like a communicator, glanced at the number on it, and said, "The helicopter will arrive in 20 minutes. Get ready to go home, kid." However, Chen Lu seemed to be unsatisfied with how Hawkeye was hiding something from him, pointing at him towards his back and asked, "What are you looking at? Can't you let me know?" "Yes, everyone needs a little secret." Yingyan still turned his back to Chen Lu to avoid him seeing the screen of the communicator, and then put the communicator back in his arms, completely defenseless against Chen Lu. Stance. "You are too right, Hawkeye." Chen Lu smiled secretly in his heart, and stretched out his right finger to Yingyan's back. "Shoot him, sharp gun." A cold light, self-disciplined right hand emerged, and silently shot towards the back of Hawkeye's head at an extremely fast speed, and the sharp blade suddenly struck quietly and deadly as if it were about to tear the night away. The flesh and skin bloomed like petals, and the blood flew out like morning mist. Your sharp spear causes 23 physical damage to Hawkeye, 7% of total health. Hawkeye enters a slight bleeding state. Triggered by the virus. Target: Hawkeye, zombie virus injected successfully. Has been infected. Ordinary superheroes have special mutations. Hawkeye will mutate into a mutant-infected person who retains the original human mind within 24 hours. Please be careful to tame it or eliminate consciousness. What? Unexpectedly, Hawkeye could detect the attack from Chen Lu by relying on human perception ability at the moment and perform dodge action keenly. However, even if it is a sharp gun with only 1/10 of its power, the speed is still not to be underestimated. Hawkeye was still cut through the skin of his neck by this trick, blood constantly leaking from the wound, and at the same time he was infected with the virus. But compared to the minor injuries suffered physically, Hawkeye suffered a complete mental injury. What could be better than a superhero doing his best to save a group of survivors, watching the most of them die weekly? Is the only person who is rescued or the one behind the scenes who can hit people even more? Even if the pain repeatedly hit Hawkeye's nerves, he still didn't want to believe that this kind-hearted boy who had been fighting with him for so long was actually a super-villain who intended to kill him. "Who are you? Cut off one head and grow 2 more heads." Chen Lu uttered another famous slogan of the Hydra organization, and at the same time showed a Hydra octopus-shaped badge on his arm with his metallization ability, which was specially displayed. Show it to Hawkeye. Anyway, this super-villain organization has done enough bad things, and I am not afraid to carry this scapegoat anymore. Moreover, Chen Lu's body was still asleep in Iron Man Tony's house. With a perfect alibi, no one would suspect him as a traitor of Hydra. "Are you, Hydra?" Hawkeye naturally reacted immediately and tried to take out the communicator to send the information back to the headquarters, but Chen Lu would not give him this opportunity at all to chop off his right arm with a long knife. When the collision between the specially made composite bow and Chen Lu's long knife produced fierce sparks. In order to avoid Shield's suspicion, Chen Lu still dare not use high-frequency slashing moves that leave particularly obvious marks. He can only use ordinary creatures. The metal long knife and the eagle eye start a close battle. Chen Lu vs. Yingyan. The inevitable battle finally started on the broad rooftop of this building. It's not that Chen Lu is willing to fight with Hawkeye alone, but it is really not clear what whole card the Hawkeye is still hiding. If you call other mutant-infected people to come over and fight, you may be caught by the Hawk. He was taken away with a desperate blow before he died. Chen Lu's doubles can be replaced if they want to change a few, but currently there are only 6 mutant-infected persons who are precious resources, and losing any of them will take a long time. Besides, he also has the certainty to defeat Hawkeye in a one-on-one heads-up. Chen Lu pressed hard at Hawkeye, swinging a long knife and launching a tide-like offensive at him. Under the quiet moonlight, the silver blade sometimes flutters like a butterfly, sometimes cuts down like a thunder, sometimes stabs like a viper, and sometimes blocks it like an iron wall. Fierce flames continued to explode between the two, and the collision of the knife and bow produced a golden sound that was louder than the sound of a gun. At present, the strength of Chen Lu's substitute is that human physical ability can reach the limit level, which means that it is slightly stronger than the average person like Hawkeye. But in terms of combat skills, Eagle Eye, an old hunter who has experienced countless big scenes, is much more proficient than Chen Lu, a superpower who is a monk. However, Chen Lu launched an offensive all the way from top to bottom, and was easily resolved by Hawkeye's bow. But Hawkeye didn't seem to wake up from the shock of Chen Lu's sudden betrayal just now, maintaining a defensive posture and couldn't bear to attack Chen Lu. "Why are you a Hydra?" Hawkeye was parrying Chen Lu's offense, while gritted his teeth and questioned him. "I clearly saw that person's shadow on you." The person in the mouth of the eagle does not need to ask him to be his most respected Captain America, the greatest American hero in the Marvel world. This reminded Chen Lu of a Marvel incident he had learned before he crossed, and he couldn't help but tease. "Really? Then maybe Captain America is also an agent of Hydra." Well, this can barely be regarded as what happened in the Marvel world. After mentioning Captain America, Hawkeye's eyes became visibly firm. He angrily pushed Chen Lu away, staring at him and shouting, "You don't deserve to say this person's name." Then, Hawkeye's attack became fierce and deadly in an instant. With his extraordinary fighting skills, Hawkeye began to steadily suppress the conventional law that was better than him. Chen Lu's offensive was forced to stop, and could only enter a defensive state to block Hawkeye's violent attack. "Oh, did I offend you?" Chen Lu further provoked Hawkeye. The compound bow that switched to the melee mode was like a huge wave, constantly shooting at Chen Lu, and the long sword used for defense even became a little distorted under the attack of Hawkeye. Chen Lu, who was unfamiliar with weapon fighting skills, gradually became unable to resist, and was repelled by Hawkeye with a bow. Hawkeye would naturally not let this flaw be. The compound bow in his hand instantly switched to the bow and arrow mode, and he rushed up to clasp Chen Lu's neck with the bow, turned around and bent over and threw Chen Lu out of his body. Meters away, Chen Lu mobilized his body muscles to readjust his posture in the air, cushioning his legs, and successfully landed without injury. But when he raised his head again, Hawkeye had put a sharp arrow on the string. Oops, the distance is stretched away. Woo! The sharp arrow whizzed through the night and came towards Chen Lu. Chen Lu hurriedly raised his knife to block it. The arrow rubbed against the blade and exploded the dazzling flame. Although Chen Lu succeeded in blocking the arrow, still being pushed back a few steps by the powerful impact attached to the arrow, the distance from the eagle eye was farther away. You must know that the strength of the compound bow in Hawkeye's hand is as high as 250 pounds. As the crystallization of shield black technology, its power is no less than modern sniper rifles or even higher. Coupled with the various special arrows that Hawkeye carries with him, it is absolutely stupid to start a long-distance battle with him. Whizzing, Hawkeye came with 2 arrows again. This time Chen Lu didn't dare to hold it big, and quickly turned his left hand into a metal buckler to resist one of the arrows, using the principle of the smooth mirror surface of the buckler to avoid being knocked back by the arrow again. However, Chen Lu, who was shrunken behind the shield, did not wait for the second arrow to arrive. He looked around and found that the second arrow was actually shot by the eagle eye, and it was 90 degrees away from the first arrow. Shooting at a right angle, drew an exaggerated arc in the air, bypassing the shield, and stabbing him. The silver arrow pierced Chen Lu's right shoulder and nailed the half of his right hand to his rib. The arrow pierced Chen Lu's body and immediately unfolded and deformed, and several hooks stretched out to wrap his lungs. Cough! A blood arrow spurted from Chen Lu's mouth, and he quickly tried to pull out the bow and arrow that had pierced into his physical strength with his left hand. But Hawkeye didn't intend to give him this opportunity. The third arrow continued to shoot violently. The arrow rotated in the air like a sniper bullet, adjusted to a perfect angle and shot through Chen Lu's chest in one fell swoop, hitting him precisely. The heart, but the arrow did not pierce the heart, but quickly transformed into an electric shock device that burst out a powerful electric shock. Is another non-lethal arrow. Hawkeye gasped fiercely. The battle just now seemed simple but actually consumed a lot of his energy, not to mention that he had experienced it before fighting against Chen Lu. What about a series of fierce battles with zombies? However, it is impossible to expect Hawkeye to weaken in this regard. In terms of endurance, with its own strong will, Hawkeye will not be knocked down by fatigue. That's over. In Hawkeye's surprised eyes, Chen Lu, who was shocked by the paralyzed arrow to his heart, casually continued to forcefully pull out the arrow with the hook on his right shoulder, along with some fragments of his lungs. It emerged from the wound, and then used his right hand to draw the arrow on his chest and then broke it. Both wounds on his body were healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and in a blink of an eye they healed so much that there were no scars left. Hawkeye quickly recovered from his surprise. After all, he had already fought many non-human characters, and said with a sneer, "High-speed self-healing. It doesn't matter, you are just a more resistant target. The remaining bioenergy is less than 50%. Eagle Eye is right." On the surface, Chen Lu ate these 2 arrows casually, but in fact, he still consumes a lot of biological energy to recover. If he eats a few more arrows, he will die. Before Chen Lu could start again, Hawkeye shot 3 arrows again. This time Chen Lu had to temporarily give up the single calculation of charging towards the Eagle Eye, and first use the solar panels on the roof as a shelter to avoid the arrow's attack. 3 arrows were nailed to the solar panel, destroying the wires inside and emitting a few electric lights. Then another sharp, turning arrow flew out of the roof of the building, drew an arc in the air, and then bypassed the bunker and attacked Chen Lu. He had to roll on the ground to avoid the blow and let the arrow hit the floor. In an instant, strong acid emerged from the arrow and quickly corroded the floor, leaving only a puff of green smoke and a very unpleasant smell. Although Chen Lu can only target Hawkeye at the moment, his understanding of Hawkeye's abilities has become clearer after this series of battles. Whether it's the Eagle Eye's magical ability to hit the enemy directly without relying on vision, or the ability to perceive the attack of the Scarlet Witch, who is capable of destroying the entire Avengers by a sneak attack group, it proves the Eagle Eye. The sensory control ability of the is definitely more than just visual or auditory keenness. The sense of touch, or the ability to feel the airflow, is the secret of Hawkeye's powerful perception ability. That's why he can avoid Chen Lu's completely silent gunshot from behind, and can also use the wind to shoot arrows that can turn. The more you understand Hawkeye, the more you understand how difficult this so-called ordinary person is. An arrow in the air parabolic over Chen Lu's head and pierced the wall behind him. It seemed that it was only a mistake and it missed the shot, but Chen Lu knew that it was a naive idea for a sharpshooter like Eagle Eye to look at him. Sure enough, in the next second, the arrow began to split and disperse from the arrow. In an instant, a large number of small arrows exploded and shot towards Chen Lu. The dense arrow attack really caught Chen Lu off guard, and countless small arrows were stabbed up and down. Out of the hole. Before Chen Lu had time to take a breath, there was another hot feeling behind him, as if his skin was poured on molten slurry. Looking back, the solar panel that was originally used as a shelter by Chen Lu was melted by a hot arrow shot by Hawkeye, and the whole was turned into hot molten iron and sprinkled on the ground. You will never guess what special arrow will be the next one that will be put on the bowstring by an Eagle Eye. The quiver behind this guy is simply a treasure chest of Doraemon. After mentioning Captain America, Hawkeye's eyes became visibly firm. He angrily pushed Chen Lu away, staring at him and shouting, "You don't deserve to say this person's name." Then, Hawkeye's attack became fierce and deadly in an instant. With his extraordinary fighting skills, Hawkeye began to steadily suppress the conventional law that was better than him. Chen Lu's offensive was forced to stop, and could only enter a defensive state to block Hawkeye's violent attack. "Oh, did I offend you?" Chen Lu further provoked Hawkeye. The compound bow that switched to the melee mode was like a huge wave, constantly shooting at Chen Lu, and the long sword used for defense even became a little distorted under the attack of Hawkeye. Chen Lu, who was unfamiliar with weapon fighting skills, gradually became unable to resist, and was repelled by Hawkeye with a bow. Hawkeye would naturally not let this flaw be. The compound bow in his hand instantly switched to the bow and arrow mode, and he rushed up to clasp Chen Lu's neck with the bow, turned around and bent over and threw Chen Lu out of his body. Meters away. Chen Lu mobilized his body muscles to readjust his posture in the air, cushioning his legs, and successfully landed without injury. But when he raised his head again, Hawkeye had put a sharp arrow on the string. Oops, the distance is stretched away. Woo! The sharp arrow whizzed through the night and came towards Chen Lu. Chen Lu hurriedly raised his knife to block it. The arrow rubbed against the blade and exploded the dazzling flame. Although Chen Lu succeeded in blocking the arrow, still being pushed back a few steps by the powerful impact attached to the arrow, the distance from the eagle eye was farther away. You must know that the strength of the compound bow in Hawkeye's hand is as high as 250 pounds. As the crystallization of shield black technology, its power is no less than modern sniper rifles or even higher. Coupled with the various special arrows that Hawkeye carries with him, it is absolutely stupid to start a long-distance battle with him. Whizzing, Hawkeye came with 2 arrows again. This time Chen Lu didn't dare to hold it big, and quickly turned his left hand into a metal buckler to resist one of the arrows, using the principle of the smooth mirror surface of the buckler to avoid being knocked back by the arrow again. However, Chen Lu, who was shrunken behind the shield, did not wait for the second arrow to arrive. He looked around and found that the second arrow was actually shot by the eagle eye, and it was 90 degrees away from the first arrow. Shooting at a right angle, drew an exaggerated arc in the air, bypassing the shield, and stabbing him. The silver arrow pierced Chen Lu's right shoulder and nailed the half of his right hand to his rib. The arrow pierced Chen Lu's body and immediately unfolded and deformed, and several hooks stretched out to wrap his lungs. Cough! A blood arrow spurted from Chen Lu's mouth, and he quickly tried to pull out the bow and arrow that had pierced into his physical strength with his left hand. But Hawkeye didn't intend to give him this opportunity. The third arrow continued to shoot violently. The arrow rotated in the air like a sniper bullet, adjusted to a perfect angle and shot through Chen Lu's chest in one fell swoop, hitting him precisely. The heart, but the arrow did not pierce the heart, but quickly transformed into an electric shock device that burst out a powerful electric shock. Is another non-lethal arrow. Hawkeye gasped fiercely. The battle just now seemed simple but actually consumed a lot of his energy, not to mention that he had experienced it before fighting against Chen Lu. What about a series of fierce battles with zombies? However, it is impossible to expect Hawkeye to weaken in this regard. In terms of endurance, with its own strong will, Hawkeye will not be knocked down by fatigue. That's over. In Hawkeye's surprised eyes, Chen Lu, who was shocked by the paralyzed arrow to his heart, casually continued to forcefully pull out the arrow with the hook on his right shoulder, along with some fragments of his lungs. It emerged from the wound, and then used his right hand to draw the arrow on his chest and then broke it. Both wounds on his body were healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and in a blink of an eye they healed so much that there were no scars left. Hawkeye quickly recovered from his surprise. After all, he had already fought many non-human characters, and said with a sneer, "High-speed self-healing. It doesn't matter, you are just a more resistant target. The remaining bioenergy is less than 50%. Eagle Eye is right. On the surface, Chen Lu ate these 2 arrows casually, but in fact, he still consumes a lot of biological energy to recover. If he eats a few more arrows, he will die." Before Chen Lu could start again, Hawkeye shot 3 arrows again. This time Chen Lu had to temporarily give up the single calculation of charging towards the eagle eye, and first use the solar panels on the roof as a shelter to avoid the arrow's attack. 3 arrows were nailed to the solar panel, destroying the wires inside and emitting a few electric lights. Then another sharp, turning arrow flew out of the roof of the building, drew an arc in the air, and then bypassed the bunker and attacked Chen Lu. He had to roll on the ground to avoid the blow and let the arrow hit the floor. In an instant, strong acid emerged from the arrow and quickly corroded the floor, leaving only a puff of green smoke and a very unpleasant smell. Although Chen Lu can only target Hawkeye at the moment, his understanding of Hawkeye's abilities has become clearer after this series of battles. Whether it's the Eagle Eye's magical ability to hit the enemy directly without relying on vision, or the ability to perceive the attack of the Scarlet Witch, who is capable of destroying the entire Avengers by a sneak attack group, it proves the Eagle Eye. The sensory control ability of the is definitely more than just visual or auditory keenness. The sense of touch, or the ability to feel the airflow, is the secret of Hawkeye's powerful perception ability. That's why he can avoid Chen Lu's completely silent gunshot from behind, and can also use the wind to shoot arrows that can turn. The more you understand Hawkeye, the more you understand how difficult this so-called ordinary person is. An arrow in the air parabolic over Chen Lu's head and pierced the wall behind him. It seemed that it was only a mistake and it missed the shot, but Chen Lu knew that it was a naive idea for a sharpshooter like Eagle Eye to look at him. Sure enough, in the next second, the arrow began to split and disperse from the arrow. In an instant, a large number of small arrows exploded and shot towards Chen Lu. The dense arrow attack really caught Chen Lu off guard, and countless small arrows were stabbed up and down. Out of the hole. Before Chen Lu had time to take a breath, there was another hot feeling behind him, as if his skin was poured on molten slurry. Looking back, the solar panel that was originally used as a shelter by Chen Lu was melted by a hot arrow shot by Hawkeye, and the hole was turned into hot molten iron and sprinkled on the ground. You will never guess what special arrow will be the next one that will be placed on the bowstring by an eagle eye. The quiver behind this guy is simply a treasure chest of Doraemon. The wind on the roof is getting louder and louder, the sound of the wind whistling around my ears, and the cold air currents seem to scratch people's faces. At this time, Chen Lu's body was full of various wounds, large and small, and his back was scorched black by the heat arrow, looking very embarrassed. But Hawkeye won't give him a chance to breathe. A cylindrical arrow shot out again, exploding into a huge trapping net before it hit Chen Lu. Why don't these superheroes like to kill directly? Chen Lu easily chopped up the trapping net and let it turn into fragments and scattered around him. At the same time, he frowned and provoked Hawkeye. Why wouldn't you just kill me? Are you still thinking that I will change the evil and return to the right? Or do you want to ask something out of my mouth? You saved those people in the supermarket before. Didn't any of them come from your sincerity? It seems that Yingyan is still worried about Chen Lu's previous behaviors in the supermarket. Maybe he still thinks that the young man in front of him there is still a trace of kindness in Agent Hydra's heart. But Chen Lu's next words immediately broke Hawkeye's illusion. Yes. They are all my pawns. Wow. A sharp arrow hit Chen Lu's chest quickly, and was dodged dangerously by a twist of his body. It seems that Eagle Eye's arrow came out with hatred, otherwise the arrow he shot could not have been evaded so easily by Chen Li. In order to continue to find a way, Chen Lu had to roll and hide in the next bunker, but any bunker would not last long in Hawkeye's hands. Not to mention the helicopter will arrive in 15 minutes. Oh, troublesome guy. While noticing the Eagle Eye's attack, Chen Lu was looking for useful props on the roof. Soon his eyes caught a gas pipe, one that killed the enemy and killed 800. Simple strategies came to mind. You can't hide for a lifetime. 2 arrows that would turn by the strong wind flew directly from behind Chen Lu. Chen Lu quickly rolled on the bunker to avoid the blow, but he was also forced to leave the bunker, shelter. 3 silver metal shurikens were formed between Chen Lu's fingers, and Chen Lu suddenly threw them out when his body was exposed within the range of Hawkeye. The 3 silver arcs smashed at Hawkeye like shooting stars. Dang. Hawkeye only slightly raised the compound bow, and 3 shurikens hit the bow at the same time and bounced away, and they were nailed to the wall behind him in vain. However, Chen Lu's long-range attack was just to delay time. He strode towards the gas pipe on the roof, and his right hand turned into a long knife to cut it open. A large amount of gas leaked out instantly, and his left hand was already lit. The lighter prepared in order to burn the forged file was thrown at the pouring gas without hesitation. Boom boom boom. The flames of the gas explosion instantly swallowed Chen Lu's body, making him disappear from the eagle eye in terms of hearing, vision, and even airflow induction. At the same time, the gas pipeline continued to undergo chain blasting, and waves of explosions followed the pipeline. Attack the eagle eye. This degree of explosion can only be regarded as a trivial matter to Hawkeye. He easily predicted the location of the chain explosion. With a light flash of his body, he avoided the explosion pipe, letting the flame of the explosion rub his hair and handsome. To avoid. But at this moment, a scorched figure suddenly appeared in the flames, rushing toward the eagle eye from the flames. A silver metal iron fist quickly expanded in front of his eyes, and even the flames of the explosion were blown away by the violent fist wind. Hawkeye was just in the state of rigid body after dodge, and had to barely raise the compound bow to block this fist. An iron fist banged heavily on the compound bow clasped by Hawkeye's hands. The strength from the bow alone made him feel the shock of his internal organs, and his body couldn't bear this strange force. His feet were thrown off the ground, retreated until he slammed into the wall behind him and left a large-shaped depression on it. 10 times iron fist. Chen Lu's hidden ultimate move finally worked on Hawkeye. Even if it was not directly hit, it would be impossible for a normal flesh and blood body like Hawkeye to defend a frontal defense with an iron fist 10 times the limit of the human body. Now Hawkeye was being hit deeply into the wall by this blow, and his body was severely injured and could not pull himself out of the wall for the time being. The remaining bioenergy is less than 10%. Chen Lu also consumes a lot of biological energy in order to restore his body from the gas explosion to a level that can initiate an offensive. Now the remaining energy is not enough for him to send out another sharp gun to end the eagle eye. The only way is to continue rushing forward, and hit the eagle's eye fiercely with melee combat. It shouldn't be difficult to see how weak the opponent is. What? Just when Chen Lu was about to take his steps and approach Hawkeye again, he suddenly found that his legs could not move at all. Looking down, I don't know when there were 2 more arrows that were embedded vertically in the ground. Several ring-mounted shackles formed on the shaft of the arrow, which locked Chen Lu's feet firmly in place. This is the trap arrow that Hawkeye arranged in advance. As an experienced hunter on the battlefield, Hawkeye has long seen through the shortcomings of Chen Lu's ability and lack of effective long-range offensive methods. Therefore, he also predicts that no matter what methods Chen Lu uses next, the goal must be to find a way to approach and engage in hand-to-hand combat with yourself. So he took advantage of the moment Chen Lu hid in the bunker and couldn't see his side, and inserted 2 trap arrows under his feet in advance, waiting for Chen Lu to throw himself into the net. Except that Chen Lu's terrifying 10-fold iron fist was not expected to be blasted and temporarily lost his mobility. All of Hawkeye's arrangements were very successful. Now the 2 are still keeping a certain distance for the eagle eye to snipe, and Chen Lu is trapped by a trap arrow and imprisoned on the ground. At the same time, the biological energy has also bottomed out, and it can be said that he has reached the end of the mountain. Finally caught a chance that Hawkeye could not dodge and used his own hidden killer move, but never expected to fall into his trap. Chen Lu and Yingyan stared at each other and gasped, and both sides of the battle were at the bottom of their physical strength, but the difference was that Yingyan was slowly recovering from the injuries caused by the 10-fold iron fist, while Chen Lu's creature's energy may not be replenished temporarily. Immediately Hawkeye was able to reopen his bow and shoot arrows, and indeed knocked down the immovable Chen Li, if he wanted to. So you thought you would win this way? Chen Lu put the last biological energy into the wound healing, barely healed the various wounds on his body, and pretended to be completely uninjured and said forcibly. But the other party didn't seem to eat this set, and was coldly criticized by Hawkeye. Really? Then you can come and hit me, if you can do it. 2 close exhausted people are slapped ridiculously. Hawkeye seemed to have slowly recovered from the impact of the 10-fold iron fist just now, and his body barely struggled to squeeze out from the wall, but he immediately spewed out another big mouthful of blood, which was obviously still badly hurt. But Hawkeye wasn't too worried. After all, Shield rescue helicopters would be resisted in at most 10 minutes, and he would be able to get good treatment soon. This also means that Chen Lu only has 10 minutes left to get Hawkeye. Hey, Hawkeye, I think you must really want to know one thing: why I have to warn you repeatedly about Alex in the supermarket. Chen Lu suddenly gave up struggling, spreading his hands to provoke Hawkeye. The question he couldn't bear to look back at. Hawkeye snorted coldly. Cut, isn't it just to deceive my trust? No, no, Chen Lu smiled and waved his hand, and said with a very awkward gesture, because Alex is also from Hydra. What? Then why are you? My God, everything is planned by you. As a Shield agent, Hawkeye is certainly not a fool. Under Chen Lu's reminder, he suddenly woke up. All the tragedies that happened just now were Chen Li's conspiracy. He and Alex looked tit for tat, but it was the 2 collisions that caused the survivors to split and kill each other. Hawkeye's fingers began to tremble slightly, and the blue veins on his forehead appeared a little bit. He lowered his head and gritted his teeth and asked Chen Lu, "Why do you want to do this? It doesn't take you so much to kill them." "Of course, because it's fun," Chen Lu replied frivolously. "You fool." Hawkeye's anger reached its limit. He had never tried to kill a person so much in his life. His fingers quickly stopped trembling, and he stretched his back and held his most lethal force. The deadliest weapon, explosive arrow, up. Seeing that Hawkeye was finally about to take his own life, Chen Lu showed a sly smile on his face instead. Finally fooled. Boom. At the moment when Hawkeye pulled the explosive arrow out of his quiver, a spark emerged from the bottom of his quiver. A small explosion suddenly occurred, and then ignited all the remaining explosive arrows, causing a powerful terror. Big bang. Before Hawkeye realized what was going on, it felt like he was pushed hard from behind. The whole person couldn't maintain his balance and was blown out. The powerful shock wave went straight through his brain and made him lose awareness. Game over. Of course, all of this is Chen Ludong's hands and feet. When he first escaped from the supermarket, didn't he borrow 2 arrows from Hawkeye on the excuse that he had no ammunition? In fact, he took advantage of that time and Chen Lu went to Hawkeye's arrows. There was something in the bag where the explosive arrow was placed. Highly flammable biometal. The explosive power is equivalent to TNT explosive, and it is extremely unstable. Simple friction will cause a terrible explosion. So from the very beginning, what Chen Lu did was to induce Hawkeye to kill himself, and to show the opponent his high-speed self-healing ability is to make Hawkeye realize that the best way to kill him is to blow people out. Fragmented explosion arrow. After a series of provocations, Chen Lu finally aroused Hawkeye's killing intent and forced him to take out the explosive arrow. At that moment, the highly flammable biometal near the explosive arrow was ignited by the violent friction caused by the arrow pulling action, and caused all the explosive arrows to explode violently, directly causing Hawkeye to lose its combat effectiveness. This trap is the biggest capital for Chen Lu to fight Eagle Eye alone. As always, a Hawkeye hit with hindsight. From the very beginning, Chen Lu was considered deadly. It can only be said that every action taken by him has not gone wrong, but such a standard qualified behavior is too easy to guess, which is the biggest reason for Hawkeye's failure. Now Chen Lu's goal has basically been achieved. The rescue helicopter will arrive in 5 minutes. If Hawkeye is completely unconscious, there is no need to worry about him talking nonsense to expose Chen Lu's ability and identity, but there are still some preparations to be done in advance, make it so as not to reveal the stuffing. First of all, it is the physical examination that Hawkeye must undergo when returning to S.H.I.E.L.D., although it is not known to what extent humans have learned about the virus, but if someone finds out that there is a zombie virus in Hawkeye's body, the old plan will be broken. Fortunately, the prompt when the virus-infected Spider-Man failed at the beginning gave Chen Lu a solution. Memories at the time. The trigger of the virus, the target, Spider-Man, the zombie virus was successfully injected. The opponent has a mutant gene, was severely rejected, the physical invasion failed, and the virus entered a dormant mode. Since this dormant mode can be automatically activated when the physical invasion fails, Chen Lu, as the master of the virus, should also be able to actively order the virus to enter the dormant mode. After a little try, a system prompt appeared. Receive an order. The virus in the target body enters the dormant mode. In the dormant mode, the virus will become extremely difficult to find, and all physical encroachment behaviors will be stopped. Receiving the command again can cancel the dormant mode and start occupying the target body again. Very good, let's plan to cancel the sleep mode in 3 hours. With the efficiency of S.H.I.E.L.D., 3 hours will be enough for them to give Hawkeye a body inspection from hair to nail tips. Of course, the result will only be anything not found. At this moment, no one will find that S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Hawkeye has become a zombie hero under Chen Lu, and will continuously bring secret information from S.H.I.E.L.D. to Chen Lu, which also means the intelligence of the entire U.S. military. The net will be controlled by Chen Lu. In the area of intelligence warfare, Chen Lu already has an absolute advantage. There is another thing, that is to cover all the black pots of Eagle Eyes and even the outbreak of zombie virus on the head of Hydra. As a man who will destroy the world, it is good to try to protect the decent organization S.H.I.E.L.D. Regardless of the villain organization Hydra trying to rule the world, all will be Chen Lu's enemies. The more fierce the fight between the two of them, the more deadly injuries, and the more people involved, the happier Chen Lu naturally became. Anyway, it was just watching the dog biting the dog, and Chen Lu wished they would die together. What, you said Hydra will send someone over to explain to S.H.I.E.L.D. that we did not do this? What's a joke? Where do you put the dignity of Hydra as the first villain of Marvel? Bad things are like a bounty for pirates to Hydra, a symbol of strength and honor. They absolutely want to thank Chen Lu. After a while, Chen Lu carved the symbol of Hydra on an inconspicuous place on the rooftop, and was ready to say something, so that after Hawkeye woke up, he explained to the S.H.I.E.L.D. that the attacker was a certain Hydra. A famous villain. Everything is perfect now. Marvel Queen's Night End. After completing the site layout for the Eagle Eye, Chen Lu left the building and watched the rescue helicopter from S.H.I.E.L.D. from a distance to rescue the Eagle Eye, who was about to become Chen Lu's chess piece, and left the blocked one. Queens, New York. Through the communication with Eagle Eye, Chen Lu also has a certain understanding of the current situation, and he needs to discuss the next action with Alex. Near the Queens block line at 4:30 a.m. in New York. On the roof of a building, Chen Lu quietly looked down at the majestic high wall that was built temporarily in front of him. The U.S. military squad patrolled the wall at any time, and the high spotlights illuminated the vicinity of the high wall as bright as day. Several main battle tanks and soldier armored vehicles were parked behind the high wall, and a Black Hawk helicopter was cruising. Once a zombie attack was discovered, it could provide powerful fire support. Master. While Chen Lu was watching the blockade, Alex had quietly walked behind him and bowed down on one knee to salute him. Chen Lu casually waved his hand to make Alex stand up, looked at the U.S. military blockade and asked, "Alex, can we break through the blockade here with our current strength? Infect all Americans. Roughly how long will it take?" It is expected that there will be heavy casualties, but the U.S. defense layout is still very hasty. Breaking through the blockade should not be a problem. Infecting all Americans, even if the most efficient infection method is used, it will take at least 1 month. 1 month, Chen Lu sneered and deduced the future development in his heart, and finally shook his head helplessly and said, "No, this is enough for other countries to use nuclear bombs to knock down the United States dozens of times. If you don't spread the virus. In most parts of the world, even if we break through this line of defense, our best result will be to die with the United States. The only thing holding the international community to prevent humans from launching nuclear bombs at the zombies is the U.S. government. If Chen Lu directs the zombies to break through this blockade and declare to the world that the U.S. government has lost control of the zombie virus, it will take less than a day. All zombies will be ruthlessly blown to ashes with the American people with nuclear bombs by all mankind. Rashly attacking is simply seeking a dead end." After understanding Chen Lu's thoughts, Alex also said bitterly, "But after the news of the zombie virus was known to other countries, they invariably blocked all customs against the United States. Even if the mutated infected person could get into the crowd, it is impossible to reach other countries. Even if it can be reached, at most 6 places will have a virus outbreak at the same time. It is really not a global virus infection." Chen Lu naturally understands that it is not a simple matter to create a global virus outbreak, at least they cannot do it with their current strength. Therefore, we must consider taking advantage of some large organizations. For example, the Hydra organization, which has been trying to rule the world, will definitely be a good piece worth using. I know this in my mind. The method of using Hydra to spread the zombie virus quickly took shape in Chen Lu's mind. Talking and talking, the dawn has come quietly, a ray of yellow light emerges from the east, a corner of the sun slowly emerges on the horizon, and the night is slowly being dissipated. Although it has been a week since he came to this world, this is the first time Chen Lu has seen the dawn of this time. However, dawn is not a good sign for the zombies. "Alex, you know the world better than I do. Let's predict what will happen next," Chen Lu said towards the dawn who broke through the night. "Okay, Master." The U.S. Army decided to summon an absolute superior force to launch an offensive for fear of adding new forces to the zombies. It is expected that the army will be assembled in a week at most. At the same time, biologists around the world have almost invested in virus vaccines. Among the research and development work, it is expected that the preliminary vaccine development can be completed in 1 or 2 months. A full-scale attack to eliminate all living zombies in at most a week, and vaccine research and development to completely eliminate all zombie viruses in at most 2 months, and the engine of mankind to fight against the catastrophe has already been fully activated. To describe Chen Lu's current situation, it is bewildered on all sides. It's no wonder that even in Resident Evil, on an ordinary Earth plane without superhero mutants and other powerful forces, T-Virus has to rely on Umbrella's outrageous organization to continuously plan and operate behind the scenes. To successfully destroy the world, if the T-Virus is a pure natural disaster without man-made disasters, then it will not cause much trouble. In this Marvel world, the only one who dominates the zombie virus is Chen Li. To destroy the world, he must do it dozens of times better than the entire Umbrella Company combined. And how easy is this to talk about? But things have to be resolved step by step, and Chen Lu doesn't plan to give up easily. The most critical point is of course the survival of the virus itself. He asked Alex, "Alex, if I control the zombie virus and swallow the extremist virus and make it evolve, will the vaccines previously studied by humans still be effective?" Of course not. The evolved zombie virus will be a brand new virus, and humans must re-research the vaccine with a new virus to be effective. Unsurprisingly, it is really great news. As long as Chen Lu can continue to evolve with the zombie virus, then the vaccines researched by humans will never be effective. This is a contest between technological progress and the speed of virus evolution. At least Chen Lu has to ensure that the zombie virus will not be completely eliminated by the vaccine. The second point is how to deal with the upcoming US attack. Wanting to be in front of them to spread the virus to the world in just 1 week is undoubtedly whimsical, and at the same time, it is impossible to break the Queen's blockade to attract a nuclear bomb for yourself, so do you want to abandon the 1 million zombies here? No, Chen Lu doesn't plan to do this. Although the virus outbreak in Queens was an accident, the birth of mutant-infected people from zombies was also a surprise, and even the advisory role like Alex was born. It might be effective to keep this group of zombies. To help Chen Lu destroy the world, at least try to keep them from under the US military. There will be an inevitable battle between the zombie army and the human army. Of course, the strength of ordinary zombies is not enough to be an enemy of the US army, so Chen Lu ordered Alex, "Alex, you can use zombie virus tests to infect various creatures, flying in the sky, running on the ground, swimming in the water, all the creatures you can find are modified with zombie viruses. These animals are likely to be of great help to us. There is also this zombie virus stock solution, and test its hidden effects, report it to me tomorrow." Chen Lu also guessed that the zombie virus has various magical effects, such as whether the zombie virus stock solution can be thrown into the sea to infect the world through the Earth's water circulation system, or if the mosquitoes are infected with the virus, it may be like dengue fever. It can also make the virus popular all over the world, and even let the cold virus and the zombie virus merge into one, so the old rules can rest easy. But all these were just unrealistic illusions created by brainstorming before the test. What can the zombie virus do? Only after actual testing can a conclusion be reached. Nowadays, Chen Lu is in a severe situation where he will never recover from taking a wrong step. He always thinks that he can win victory by taking a wrong step. It was only at the stage of implementation that the virus did not have such a strong effect. That would be too ridiculous, ridiculous enough to be able to. Ranked as one of the most funny villains in history. Practice is the only criterion for testing the truth. If it is not a last resort, Chen Lu will only use tested and effective methods. After all, Chen Lu is not a god, so he can only use his mortal wisdom as much as possible. If the virus itself is long enough to destroy the world, what meaning does the existence of Chen Lu have? Believe that the system will not do such a mentally retarded thing. Tony's home at 7 a.m., August 12, 2009, New York time. Chen Lu's body climbed up on the luxurious sofa of Tony's house, and after confessing everything to Alex, he left his stand-in and returned here to start his new day as the former Hydra killer. The TV in the living room was still on, but Tony had disappeared, and he should have left in advance. But it doesn't matter, Chen Lu knows that Tony will definitely come back to find himself today. It happened that the New York morning news was being broadcast on TV, and it happened to be Mary Jane Watson, a reporter from the Daily Horn, who said she was Spider-Man's little girlfriend. "I don't know what's going on with little Spider now. It should be sent to the Shield Medical Institution for treatment." According to Chen Lu's estimation, he should still be in a coma. Otherwise, if such a big incident happened in his Queens area, it would be impossible for Spider-Man to come back and trouble Chen Lu without making a big noise. Mary Jane is interviewing an American military officer on TV. "Hello, Colonel Roddy, I am very glad that you are willing to accept my interview. Actually, I'm not very willing, you are here to stop me forcibly. If you don't mind, can you get out of the way?" Roddy said to Mary Jane as politely as possible. It seemed from his expression it's been very bad recently. The owner of another Iron Man suit War Machine Roddy. When he appears as a superhero, he will wear the Iron Man suit transformed from the Mk2 mecha made by Tony, but it seems that now he just appeared as a colonel in the US military. He will appear here to show that the US military has already attached great importance to the situation in Queens. Perhaps Chen Lu is about to face a terrifying army of superheroes and the US aircraft carrier battle group. It is quite a bad situation. Mary Jane, of course, would not let Roddy go easily. She asked him with an attitude of never giving up without getting the big news. Colonel Roddy, your US military launched a large-scale evacuation operation in Manhattan last night, and protect everyone from leaving New York to seek refuge in other cities. Does the military have any reasonable explanation for this matter? Seeing that this group of media was going to be stalking, Roddy had no choice but to explain to them in an official tone, yes, we currently suspect that there is a nuclear leak in the New York area. We have sealed off the relevant area, please. Citizens should not approach at will. And we implore all New Yorkers not to panic. No matter what happens, everything is currently under the control of the US military. You will not encounter any danger. Please cooperate with our work to evacuate from New York in an orderly manner. However, there is a lot of evidence of the zombie virus outbreak in Queens on the internet. What do you think of the military? Mary Jane asked a very sharp question. The US government definitely wants to suppress the situation in such a serious matter. It can't be suppressed. No comment. Sure enough, Roddy could only show embarrassment and pushed a lot of media away and left. Nuclear leak accident. The US government's use of this excuse is really unpredictable. When the situation is really uncontrollable, 5 or 6 nuclear bombs will be thrown down and it will be changed into a nuclear power plant explosion. In short, until the successful completion of the global virus outbreak plan, Chen Lu can't push the US government too tight, lest the other party really breaks the net. At the very least, don't try to break through the US blockade. It is a feasible way to use other methods to strengthen the combat effectiveness of the zombie army before the US military completes the assembly. Hey, is Mr. Tony Stark here? I'm here to deliver materials. A man stood in front of the gate of the mansion and shouted inside, stacking all kinds of bottles and cans at his feet, which contains liquids of different colors. As a housekeeper, Jarvis answered the door automatically, identity check. There is an appointment and the door is open. Please come in, Mr. Dave, please put the combustion aid, cleaning agent and fire extinguishing foam in the designated area, thank you for your cooperation. It seems that these are all necessary consumables for Tony's Iron Man mecha. The internal cleaning and firefighting of the mecha requires special detergent and fire extinguishing foam, and the ignition of the propeller requires a combustion aid. In general, Tony made everything about Iron Man mecha by himself, but even if he pursues perfection, he doesn't plan to work these scraps and buy directly from outside. This is human nature, isn't it? These things were randomly placed next to the gate and moved to the ground when Tony came back. In addition, Chen Lu cannot enter the basement without Tony's permission. After all, there is his precious Iron Man mech, which is sealed by a large number of electronic locks on the security door. At around 8 o'clock, Tony came back from outside, but his face was not very good. As soon as he came in, he said to Chen Lu, who was sitting on the sofa, "Chen, you must go with me. Some people want to see you." Shield, right. Since Chen Lu fabricated his identity as the Hydra killer, he had expected that SHI. However, in order to avoid exposure to the real Hydra, Chen Lu had to reveal another important news to Tony. You better not let me go there, because S.H.I.E.L.D. has been completely infiltrated by Hydra. What? Tony was naturally surprised. After all, it is no longer a day or two for him to be a special consultant for S.H.I.E.L.D. He smirked twice and asked, Hydra has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. How could it be possible? My father established this organization, and I have been stationed in S.H.I.E.L.D. for a long time, and I have never discovered the existence of Hydra. There are loopholes in any organization. Don't doubt my words. I don't know all the Hydra agents lurking in S.H.I.E.L.D., but I know who is worthy of trust. Captain America and S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Nick Fury. Except for these two, don't trust anyone other than yourself. Chen Lu stared into Tony's eyes, and said seriously, once I appear in S.H.I.E.L.D., I will be cleared by Hydra immediately. Tony also saw that Chen Lu was really not joking. The fake smile on his face slowly gathered. He avoided Chen Lu's sight and walked to the corner of the living room to make a call. He came back a few minutes later and said to Chen Lu, "Okay, kid. We have to talk about this. Don't worry, there are only Captain America and Nick." No other SHIELD people will show up. Very good. Now Hydra will not know that there is a betrayer, Chen Lu, for the time being. Still as usual, Tony took out the syringe and gave Chen Lu a shot, which once again sealed his ability, but this time there was something different. You have received Tony Stark's special anesthetic injection, and you are currently in a state of full power seal, limb weakness, and unable to get angry. Detected the same repeated drug effect, deconstructed the drug successfully deconstructed. Antibody production, 50% antibody completed, waiting for the next drug injection. Drugs have always been used more often, the worse the effect is, because antibodies will appear in everyone's body to cause drug resistance, and the body of the virus of the old law is more likely to have durability. From the system prompts, 2 injections can crack 50%, which means that the 4th injection can be completely immune to this anesthetic. It will be the death date of Iron Man. Tony drove his tens of millions of dollars in a luxury car out of the basement and took Chen Lu to the direction agreed upon with Nick and Captain America. About an hour and a half later, at about 9:30 in the morning, the luxury car carrying Tony and Chen Lu was transferred to a small country house in the suburbs of New York. For billionaires like Tony, this place is really low-key. As soon as I opened the door, I saw a black man in a suit and leather shoe wearing a pirate-like eye patch was arguing with a superhero in a blue star-spangled uniform. It must be S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Nick Fury and the Avengers. The leader of the League is Captain America. The two of them often work hand in hand to lead mankind against various unknown supernatural forces, but the feelings seem to be not good now. There is such a big thing in Queens that you forbid me to go there for a mission. What do you think, Nick? Captain America asked Nick fiercely. As the leader of the Avengers, he has long been accustomed to whatever happens. Everything appears on the front line for the first time, so it is naturally impossible not to care about the virus outbreak in Queens. Nick replied blankly. Captain, you have to understand that we are facing a virus that may mutate at any time with humans as the host, and you are a genetically modified super soldier. If you are infected, then your body, the super soldier serum, made the virus undergo a certain mutation that we could not predict, then you are the guilty man who killed 7 billion people. Then you should at least tell me earlier, instead of waiting for Hawkeye to explain to me. If you are not always so impulsive, I don't have to hide it from you until now. Hey, two. Seeing the two arguing more and more intensely, Tony rushed to separate the two, using a less serious way to persuade him to fight. It seems that our captain will be ruled out this time. It's out of action, but at least you two don't lose face in front of outsiders, okay? It was Nick and Captain America who realized the existence of Chen Lu. Nick immediately left behind Captain America, who was still in irritation, and talked to Chen Lu. Are you the killer who escaped from the Hydra base? Yes, Chen Lu answered calmly. Originally, I was going to ask you something about the zombie virus in Queens, but according to what you said, it seems that we are still facing another bigger crisis. You said that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been infiltrated by Hydra. This what's going on? If S.H.I.E.L.D. cannot resume normal operations, it is impossible to expect it to handle the zombie virus crisis. The so-called banter must first and nay, Nick can only focus on the inside of S.H.I.E.L.D. There are a large number of Hydra members who successfully penetrated into S.H.I.E.L.D. I just heard about it. In fact, I don't know the names of most of them. But the one who penetrated the most was downed by me. I've heard of it, Alexander Pierce, a member of the World Security Council. Pierce. Nick was visibly shaken when he heard the name, and said a little flustered, are you serious? He is the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh, fortunately he is not the current one, Chen Lu said in a calm tone. Nick was silent for a few seconds before he sighed heavily and said, well, I will investigate. Then what do you know about the zombie virus? Is the virus related to the Hydra? I have heard of this plan. There is a Hydra research base in Sokovia, Eastern Europe. Maybe you can find something there. All the information about Hydra mentioned by Chen Lu is the information that appeared in the plot of Marvel movies, so there can be no fakes. Sokovia in Eastern Europe does have a Hydra research base, but it depends on the capabilities of S.H.I.E.L.D. Still the same sentence, the more intense the fight between S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra, the greater the living space left for Chen Lu's zombie army, so he intends to lure the two forces into a stalemate for a while. Okay, Captain, can you take him out for a stroll first? After receiving too much information at a time, Nick must discuss with Tony, who is a consultant for S.H.I.E.L.D. Of course, this kind of confidentiality cannot be known to Chen Lu. Captain America looked reluctant, but he walked out of the house with Chen Lu. Seeing that only himself and Tony are left here, Nick just sat down on the sofa with a sad face. Seeing his appearance, Tony also sat down and asked, "It's been very difficult these days, isn't it?" "Actually, you don't have to believe that kid too much. Who knows if he is undercover? If the name Pierce given by him is true, I believe that Hydra does not have to sell such important information to gain our trust. Nick has been the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. for so long, how could he have not noticed the 9 heads at all? What about the existence of snakes? It's just that no one came forward to testify, so when Chen Lu said the name Alexander Pierce, he knew that the other party was telling the truth." Seeing Nick's serious appearance, Tony also gradually realized the seriousness of the matter, and withdrew his frivolous expression and asked, "Then what are you going to do?" "There are only 3 days left to prepare for a full-scale attack on Queen's God. It's impossible for the S.H.I.E.L.D. to not participate in the war." "Yes, but taking the Hydra undercover to participate in the battle will only hinder his teammates." Nick worriedly supported his chin and looked at Chen Lu outside the window by Captain America. "If what this guy said is true, this time the black hand of the virus is still Hydra, maybe S.H.I.E.L.D. will not help by then. We must clean out all the Hydra members within 3 days. Nick, time is too tight like this." "Yes." Nick's eyes became sharp and he seemed to have made a major decision. "Then we have to kill 1,000 mistakes instead of letting one go." I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.